Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 20th Conversation About Education. If you've missed the last 19, stay in touch. We like to do this because there's important things to talk about in our community. This is a partnership between the Indianapolis Public Library, your host here this evening, and our good friends at WFYI Public Media. We are delighted this evening that in addition to our friends at WFYI, we also welcome the additional support of our colleagues at Chalkbeat Indiana and good friends from Teachers Treasure and Stand for Children, all organizations that are interested in improving the quality of education here in our community. As you know, your public library is very focused on information. We consider ourselves a partner to education. This is part of why we have convened this series of conversations with WFYI over the last several years. Many of them are really aimed at getting introductions for all of you as to who's who in education, but also going deep and looking at the issues that really matter and trying to encourage people to take the actions they need to take. WFYI has had something called the American Graduate Initiative. You may have seen some wonderful programming just recently where they spent an entire day celebrating educational related activities in our community, and we appreciate their partnership. Chalkbeat may be new to some of you. It was new to me. It is a not-for-profit news organization covering educational change efforts in communities where improvement matters the most. WFYI is live streaming this event, don't we love technology, and it will be available on the web later this evening. We encourage you to tweet, and you can use the hashtag AMGRADINDY, American Graduate Indy, okay? So we'd like you to turn off the ringer on your cell phones, but we encourage you to tweet, and that's really valuable. We want to spread the word. Some guidelines for this evening. This is about an election, an important election. And as someone who has survived 4 elections in my life, I understand how important it is to get information out about our candidates and to make sure that all of us encourage our friends to go vote. This evening, we will present the candidates for the school board in 2 groups of 5. Scott Elliott will launch the conversation with our candidates. There will be opportunities for questions from the audience, and we do ask that you go to a microphone if you wish to ask a question when that time comes. There will be a break at approximately 6:50. We will switch players and continue on our way. At this time, I would like to welcome Scott Elliott. He is the founding bureau chief of Chalkbeat Indiana, an award-winning journalist who has covered education for 18 years. Currently president of the National Education Writers Association. He was previously an education reform reporter at the Indianapolis Star, so he does know our community. And in 2008, covered an explosion of charter schools in Dayton that made the city the #1 charter school marketplace from 2000 to 2005. So he has an in-depth knowledge of one of our new developments in recent years. His blog, which is called Get on the Bus, was the 3rd mainstream media education blog when he launched it in 2005. I actually didn't even know people were blogging already in 2005. Good for you. So he is the Knight Wallace Journalism Fellow at the University of Michigan, and I'd like to welcome Scott Elliott to the stage.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate everybody being here, and thank you again to our partners and sponsors that were just mentioned. Before we get started, just a couple of comments about the format and the evening tonight. First of all, I just want to start out by saying I really think it's courageous that people put themselves forward for public office. We have 10 good people here today who've offered themselves up for the IPS School Board. Let's be sure to be respectful and keep our passions in check as this discussion unfolds. We mentioned tweeting a minute ago. We do have a hashtag for this event. It's elect IPS, so use that hashtag when you're tweeting about this. Also, in terms of format, one other thing, we mentioned comments before. There will be cards for you to write the comments down. Raise your hand if you want a card and you didn't already get one, or I think they're at the front door. Just hand those to the folks taking them when we get to question time. Finally, format, I'll give each of the candidates 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Then I'll ask some questions, and then we will move on to questions that were gathered up from the audience. So let me just quickly introduce all 5 candidates, and then we'll start by letting you introduce yourselves. We have the incumbent, Annie Roof, who's on the school board currently, Josh Owens, we have David Hampton, we have Marianne Sullivan, and we have Ramon Batts. Thank you all for being here. Annie, would you like to start by introducing yourself?
Sure, thank you, Scott. My name is Annie Roof. I am currently on the school board and the current IPS board president. I guess you want us to talk about why we're running as well?
Sure, give us about 3 minutes about
Okay.
who you are and why you're here.
I'm running because I believe I'm already a good change agent for IPS. Since I've been on the IPS board, we have hired new leadership into the district. We've increased transparency, including transparency with our budget, increased principal autonomy at the school level, replicated successful programs that include CFI, IB, and Project Restore. We've increased our parent engagement and community engagement with things like the community engagement meetings that we've started, Coffee with the Commissioner, where we go into neighborhoods and talk to people, and we've moved our retreats from the central office into neighborhoods. Recently, our most recent one was held at Teachers Treasures. That was change brought on by me that I accept full credit for. My main reason for running and wanting to stay on the board is I still have 3 kids in the district. And that's really important to me that we have a parent voice and that we retain that parent voice. I choose every day to choose IPS. And every day my kids get on an IPS school bus and go to an IPS school. And I think that's more valuable than anything else.
Josh Owens?
Sure, thanks, Scott. So my name is Josh Owens. I am very excited to be in this race. I think that there's a lot of things that we still need to do with IPS and things that we can improve with IPS. I think 2 of the main reasons that I wanted to get involved here is there's kind of 2 statistics that have stepped out at me. One is 3 out of 10 students don't graduate IPS schools. The second is that we start in 1st grade with about 3,400 first graders, and by 12th grade we only have approximately 1,200 12th graders. And so we need to do a lot more to retain the students that are within the system, and we need to do a lot more to attract students. The great thing that I've been a part of, and I've been a mentor at some IPS schools in the past as well, is that we do have some great teachers. We've got some great schools here within IPS. What we need to do is expand those schools and expand them much more rapidly. So schools like Gambold Prep, schools like Crispus Attucks and Ernie Pyle. And I think if we can put our resources into that and expand those much more quickly, we will have the results that we need within this district. I'm running because I really want graduation rates to be at the state level, and I think that we can do that here within IPS with the resources that we have. As far as my background, I teach at Butler University Economics and Statistics. Before that, I was in the business community at companies like Angie's List and One Click, helping those companies expand nationally. Thank you.
Thank you. David Hampton.
Hi, I'm David Hampton, and thank you for having us, Scott. Glad to be here. Running for IPS School Board because I believe Indianapolis Public Schools, I believe in our public school system, but I do believe a strong public school means a strong Indianapolis as well. Children are, of course, my passion. Education has been my passion. Have a track record of advocacy and community engagement. And I believe that when it comes to our children, number one, education is, of course, the key to transcending poverty and prison. And in light of the true statistic that African-American boys, prisons are built based on the 3rd grade reading levels of African-American boys. That's critical for me because I'm a parent of a young African-American boy, and I want to make sure that I care about all of our children because every child deserves a quality education. But we do have to look at the broader implications of making sure that our educational system is serving our children and serving them well. When it comes to parents, I believe parents need support services and parents need to be also empowered. I would love to see some of those support services provided within the schools, right there at the public schools. And then when it comes to teachers, our teachers work hard. Good teachers deserve raises. Good teachers deserve to be rewarded for their hard work and their diligence. And I believe when we raise the level of our teacher pay and teacher quality, then it will also raise the level of our public school system. There's a saying that says, high tides rise all ships. And so my priority is children. but all of the support systems around children, whether it be parents, whether it be the community, whether it be teachers, I think that we need to rise all the tides, and now is the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Marion Sullivan.
Thank you, Scott. My name is Marianne Sullivan, and I'm running for the IPS School Board because I believe that IPS can be the best urban school system in this country. And I make that bold statement as a former IPS parent and employee, as a current IPS grandparent, and as the mother of an absolutely awesome IPS teacher. I'm committed to working tirelessly until every child in every neighborhood has access to a great school. And a district full of those great schools will be possible only if we're able to attract and retain talented school leaders and teachers and empower them to make the important decisions that they need to make in their buildings. I support changing the district from a top-down to a bottom-up system where individual schools are provided support and resources that they need to be successful. I think that new leadership in the superintendent's office, coupled with unprecedented outpouring of community support for education, is creating opportunities for collaboration and innovation that we've never seen before. And so I want to help harness all of that positive energy to benefit the entire community. I've lived in Indianapolis all my life, grew up on the east side, raised my family in Irvington, have a long career of working in and around public education. My work as a parent advocate inspired me to go to graduate school and study policy analysis with a focus on education policy. So I served 2 terms in the Indiana House of Representatives from 2008 to 2012, and I was known there for working across the aisle to put kids first, and I can't wait to do that on the IPS board.
Thank you. Ramon Batts.
Thank you, Scott. My name is Ramon Batts, and I am a graduate of Tech High School, 1990 graduate of Tech. Well, let me back up. I'm a proud 1990 graduate of Arsenal Technical High School, where I've played basketball at Tech High School. I was a class president there, and I went on from there to college to obtain a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a doctorate degree as well. And so I've been born and raised here in Indianapolis, attended all Indianapolis Public Schools my entire life, and I'm looking at dreamers every day, and I've been, since I've come back out of college, I've been volunteering at IPS, mentor, coaching, substitute teaching. I've swept floors, cleaned walls, whatever I've done for our children at IPS, and whatever they've needed, I've tried to do. And so I'm a very important advocate for our children in terms of how we see our district and how they see themselves. Because I come from where they come from. I've done a lot of what they've done. I've turned away some things that they've turned away. And so I understand them. I understand their parents, being a parent myself. I understand what parents need and how they need to obtain information for their children. And that's what our parents are missing, that they find out too late about certain things in order for their children to succeed. And so parent engagement for me is a top priority, along with recruiting and retaining culturally competent and paid teachers, fairly paid teachers. We need to pay teachers to do what they do best and allow them to have the resources that they need for their classroom and for their buildings as well. And so I think that this work in the school board is something that I've been preparing for my entire life to make sure that our city has the best representation possible and a voice that's strong, not scared to speak up about issues that our children need and our teachers need and that IPS needs.
Thank you. I'm going to now ask some questions, and I should just make it clear, all these questions were developed by myself and the Chalkbeat team. None of the candidates have seen them in advance. We're going to start right over here on this side with Annie Roof. On the school board, you came in, I would say, as an advocate for change, and you've often endorsed or voted for some of the reform ideas that some people might consider controversial at this point. And yet you were endorsed recently, I understand, by ISTA, is that correct, the Indiana State Teachers Association? They're opposed to some of these same ideas. So I'm wondering, have you changed your views, and what side of the fence would you consider yourself on at this point?
First, I'd like to reclaim the word reform, and I've said that before, because in my opinion, we're all reformers if we're here and we want to make something better, and that's what I think we want to do. I don't think I've changed the side on which I am. I may have learned to become more cautious. I'm very proud to have the support of the ISTA. It kind of took me by surprise, not that we don't have a great relationship, but because 4 of the 6 years they haven't had raises under my watch. So I was really proud that they trusted me and know that my heart is in it for them to get raises and that that's what we need to do. So without a specific of what reform-minded thing you're talking about, I don't think I've changed, just may become more cautious.
Why do you think you've attracted so much competition, and many of your opponents in this race I think are trying to argue that they are more reform-oriented than you are?
Actually, 4 years ago when I ran, we had 7. So I don't know if this is it's not any bigger than it was 4 years ago. And I have not heard any of my opponents talk about being reform-minded. I've heard everyone else talk about them being reform-minded.
Okay, well, maybe we'll get a chance to hear them talk about it themselves. One last question, Annie. As a member of this board, what accomplishment that you played a personal role in are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a good question. I think creating the engagement committee, even though it's kind of slowed down, and going out into the community and really engaging parents and community members and giving them a voice. I think that's one of the things I've been most proud. I've always said, email me and I'll email you back, and I've gotten a lot of emails from staff who said, I want to talk to you, but I need to remain nameless, and I've always kept that confidential and still helped them.
Thank you. Josh Owens. When we interviewed you, you said that you thought you were the most reform-oriented candidate in the race. What do you think you would do differently than others in this race who also say they're for reform?
Sure, and I think what Annie was saying there is very true. I mean, we all are. I mean, really, we've got a great set of candidates here in front of you, and I think that speaks a lot to to what we're trying to do here with IPS. I think for me specifically, what I'm getting at is kind of my background. So my background is really in entrepreneurial startups and kind of those technology companies that are really itching to create change within the community, trying to create change within the sector that they're in. At Butler, kind of teaching, one of the things that I've done is launch the online classes, and I think that we've had some great success with those type of classes as well. We've seen that really useful in kind of tutoring and remediation and getting students back up to speed in what they're looking for so that they can continue on and be successful within their classes as well. So when I look at it more as just my kind of personality, my background. I'm going to push very hard for changes. I mean, I think that we can achieve great results at every single school in IPS, and I think that we can do it right now in the next 4 years. I don't think that there's any reason to think that we can't with the teachers that we have, with the resources that we have, with the teachers that we have, and the students and the schools that we have. So I think for me, it's really going to be about tone and about partnerships to make sure that we can make that happen.
So you have this background in data analysis, and I wonder, this is a hot idea in education right now. We recently wrote a story about Governor Pence's efforts to use more data analysis in the education system in the state. It's a somewhat controversial idea. Can you give a specific example of how you think IPS could better analyze its data and how it would have a specific outcome?
Sure. Well, I think it's one of the things that I was talking about early on, which is, I mean, IPS is unlike many school districts in that we start with a large number of first, second, third graders, and then that's dwindling out throughout. Once we get to 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, I mean, we're down around 1,200 students. So that's one of the issues that we have within IPS is the way that those students are kind of falling out. We have relatively good schools throughout, right? We have kind of pockets of good schools throughout, but the problem is that we've got kind of a placement or we've got issues going throughout that system. So we get students or we have parents who will leave the system and then they won't come back to IPS. One of the things that we need, especially with a resource-constrained district, is you've got to retain those students. One of the great ways that we can pay our teachers more is to make sure that we've got more students there and that we've got more dollars to be able to put that into classrooms. So specifically, things that I've done in business has been using that type of data to be able to better identify students that are at need, students that need help, and that we can reach those a lot sooner. So I think for us, what we would look to use that type of data for would be in identifying students that are kind of on the edge that might be falling out, or families that might be looking to leave the district, and being better targeted in the services that we can get to those individuals and those students, into those families. I think we could do some really cool things with that. As with anything, you've got to be careful with the data, especially when we're talking about children, right? Data with our children and things of that nature. needs to be secure, it needs to be safe, it needs to be transportable, but it needs to be trackable in a way that we can use it in a smart way. So I think that, I would be cautious with the way that we're collecting and the way that we use it, but I think it could be incredibly powerful for retaining students within the district.
Is there something you think that principals and teachers right now don't look at in terms of data that they could be utilizing to do those very things?
Ooh, I mean, I'll tell you, that's tough. I mean, as an educator, and it's different in college than in K through 12, so I don't want to make that comparison too much, but I'll tell you, I mean, I know teachers are evaluated all the time. Myself, as a teacher, I'm evaluated 300 times a semester, so I know that can be overwhelming at times. There's a ton of data that they're looking at right now. I think what we need to find is what are the things that really correlate highly with successful schools that we currently have. Some of those schools I've mentioned, Ernie Pyle, right? Some of the CFI schools, and we need to replicate those types of successes. So I wouldn't try to overload them with data. What I think we need to do is find the data that works really well. We probably already have a baseline for that, but we can improve that as well.
Thank you. David Hampton, tell us a little bit about what motivated you to get into this race. Why did you decide to run for school board? As I understand, run a very big church. That sounds like a big job. This is some additional work for you. So why did you get into this race?
I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. No, as you mentioned, I am a pastor. I'm not running as a pastor for the school board. I'm running as a passionate community citizen, somebody who cares about the community. Also as a parent and as someone who has been involved in the educational process. I think it's important that that I mentioned that my priority is children, and so I like the conversations around education, around reform, around how we can improve our traditional educational system. I like the ideas of how we can be innovative, but I think that we have an opportunity to have the best public school system right here in Indianapolis, in the country, if we're willing to tweak some things, and if we're willing to make sure that, and I agree, and I think that Josh kind of mentioned it, but we don't really have to look for dollars. I think we have the dollars. We just need to make sure that we configure. It costs $16,000 to educate a child in IPS. $6,000 actually gets spent in the classroom. If we could put more of those dollars into the classroom so that the children benefit from them, I don't see why IPS can't be as good as any other school system in this country.
Let's say you were allowed to redirect another $5,000 from the central office and into a school. Like, how would you spend that money?
I'd like to see the use of technology. One of the things I like when I go into a school is to see smart boards and children who have access to iPads or laptops. I don't see that being any different for our public school children. They should have access. We are in a technological world. I'd love to see, teachers need raises. We need resources in the classroom to make sure that all of the technical resources are available to children that may not be there currently.
Something that you told our reporters that I found interesting was you were very upfront in saying you're a believer in vouchers, the private school voucher program in the state, and you also have a personal connection to some private schools. Do you think it's a contradiction for someone who's a believer in private schools to be on the IPS school board, and why or why not?
Sure, not at all. Children are my priority, and I'm a believer in making sure that children have the best possible education, and I think parents should have choices. I think it's a parent's choice as to where they send their child. Every child learns differently. Learning models are different for each child. So parents should have the choice to send their child to the best school for their child. If that's an IPS school, then they need to send them to an IPS school.
So let me ask you the same question that I just asked a moment ago to Josh Owens. There's several candidates in this race who are pitching themselves as the most reform-oriented candidate. But what differentiates you? What is it about your views on reforming the district that makes you a better candidate than the other candidates who may be saying the same things?
Yeah, I would say I'm a progressive-minded candidate. I think, again, I believe in a broad-based model for IPS. I think that I'm in favor of whatever model best delivers the highest quality education for our children. I try to stay out of the arguments and the debates around charter schools versus traditional public schools. I've worked in both sectors, as a pastor, as a community leader. I like to work across lines, whether partisan lines or educational philosophy. So I've been on the IPS advisory board even when Dr. White was the superintendent. I've also worked with charter organizations to make sure that as a community leader, I am at least at the table of discussion. Doesn't mean I agree with all of the policies. The data shows that charter schools are not outperforming traditional public schools necessarily, so I don't think all charter schools are doing well, and all of our IPS schools are not failing. I think we need to be wise to be open to doing whatever is necessary to provide the best quality education for our children. And that, to me, should be the central focus, not arguing over charter versus traditional.
Thank you. Mary Ann Sullivan, I'm going to go right to that same point, as long as we're on it here, about differentiating yourself from other candidates who have similar views to you. One obvious contrast is while you were in the legislature, you voted against the creation of the voucher program, if I'm correct. Could you talk about that difference that you have with, at least with Mr. Hampton here, and your other views on how you think you're different in your approach to reforming IPS than the other candidates?
Well, in terms of the voucher program, that was very much related to my service in the General Assembly, and my belief that my focus was on the public system, because that's what I was directly charged with working on. So that was kind of a philosophical difference there. As an IPS school board member, I would not see that I would be dealing with vouchers. That's not my issue. It's not my concern to worry about. Parents that find great schools for their kids, where their kids are doing well, I applaud that. That's wonderful. So it was a very specific policy issue related to the area that I was serving. In terms of differentiating myself on education reform, I've just had such a long history in this field. It's kind of hard to know where to begin. I started out as a parent advocate. I've done a lot with parent engagement, and originally got in supporting charter schools, although as an IPS parent, because charter schools, when they started, were very much about empowering teachers and teacher voice and small local solutions to education. And so that's still carried with me now. So I don't really know, a lot of differences from others on this panel. I think most of us are pretty similar in the kinds of policies that we support in terms of empowering parents, teachers, allowing a lot more local decision making, holding people accountable for results, all of those kinds of fundamental associated with reform. And like Annie, I'm not a fan of the word reform, because to me it's continuous improvement. That's what it's about. If we're not always about getting better, then we're not doing the right thing.
What do you think you would do differently than some of the other candidates on the stage? Why are you the one to vote for?
I think that my experience over the years, the relationships I've developed in the community, I've always worked. Part of why I studied in SPIA rather than the School of Ed is because I don't believe that education should be siloed from the rest of public policy. So to do everything possible to collaborate and work together rather than hold education as kind of a specialized, separate effort from the rest of what we do for our community. So I've been very involved in a lot of city engagement, neighborhood engagement. That's the kind of grassroots work that I've done, quality of life plans, all of those kind of real neighborhood-based initiatives. So I just think that having that background lets me bring a lot of relationships to the board.
So you've held the highest elected office, think of anybody on the stage. You took a risk and ran for the state senate 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So you've been out of elected office for a couple of years. Are there other elected offices you're still interested in and possibly running for in the future?
No.
So if you were elected, could the voters count on you to do a 4-year term on the IPS board?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The school board and the opportunities in IPS are a very unique situation. And for me personally, it's very much of a full circle, because my involvement in advocacy started with my kids. And so, and I respect very much, President Roof's commitment to that, but I've never left that, and now it's my grandkids. And so it's a very strong and compelling reason to do this work. But for me, it's also coming full circle and being able to bring all of the relationships and all the information that I've had, all the experiences I've had in the interim between when I started as a parent advocate and where I am now.
Thank you. Ramon Batts, you are probably have the most different views, I would say, of anyone here. You're not a big fan of some of the reforms of recent years in the district. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you view the district and what your take is on how to make it better?
Certainly. One of the reasons that I don't know that the other candidates have spent a whole lot of time in the district, period. I'm talking about not just at one school or one segment of the school, but I spent time in several parts of the district. And I believe that we have teachers who are doing a great job. We have some teachers who are lacking. Everybody doesn't perform well. But for the most part, from what I've seen over the years, is IPS go up. Programs that have been created, magnet programs have been created. You have children who weren't passing tests before, now are passing tests. I remember distinctly, really, IPS starting with Dr. White starting the process or the argument about getting our children in preschool earlier. And so it's amazing to me how we have so many reforms that need to take place, but yet we've had children graduating from IPS going to Harvard. We've had them going to West Point. They're going to Stanford, Purdue, IU, Howard. They're going to Virginia Union. We have children who are graduating high school in IPS and going to great colleges. And even if they're not the top of the line colleges, they're going to school and they're finishing school as well and coming back and helping out and working. How do I know that? Because I'm there. I get phone calls at 2 or 3 in the morning, hey, I can't find my son or daughter, and I get up out of my bed and go and help out and see what I can do. Why? Because parents have made a connection with me. They know who I am. I'm recently a state champion basketball coach. Why? Because I've been in IPS coaching the Tech High School, at the middle school there, and helping those kids get to where they're supposed to be. So it is, it's amazing to me that this word reform, or if they didn't want to call it reform or whatever they want to call it, that it is needed. I don't think that some of the things that are happening are needed. I think there's some hidden agendas. This is America. It's always a hidden agenda. Anybody say that there's not a hidden agenda? This is a capitalist society, and you don't have business people putting money in places and not looking for some return on their investment. Okay,
so let me ask you a question here. There's no question that you're correct that there are many students in IPS who go on to succeed, many of them. There's also a larger share of students in IPS who don't graduate, who don't go on to college, who don't succeed in life. So what is your strategy for dealing with those students?
Well, we were on that path, and we had several different programs with over-under program, Diploma Plus, and then program we started to help keep our boys and girls from being expelled from school. It was Project Last Chance. I didn't like the name of it, but nevertheless, but it was a character development program. But you had men and women who were part of the school system and who spent time helping these young boys, these young girls see life differently, because you have to understand that where they come from in order to get them to where they're going. Because when they wake up in the morning, they may wake up and their lights are off. They may wake up and only have one pair of clothes. They may have spent the whole night listening to their parents argue. They may have spent the whole night hearing gunshots throughout. Their cousin may have been shot that night, or the sister may have been raped. You've got to understand that you got to meet them where they are in order to take them where they need to go. And so those things are happening, and our graduation rates were going up. And I know some of us can't count too well. I'm one of them. I was in general math, but those numbers that I saw a 77% IPS graduation rate in 2013. And so we're getting close to what Josh wants to happen. And so I think if he comes back more and volunteer more, and if he can get out of Butler, then we'll be able to get there.
So let me ask you this. That's true, graduation rate to go up, but quite a number of kids are graduating IPS without being able to pass the state test. Do you think that doesn't matter?
Well, here's the thing, that we got to think about why these tests were created. And if I recall, we go back to No Child Left Behind, that one of our former presidents put into place, and which he didn't put any money behind it, but yet he put some system together to rate our schools, so that now that there would be a reason for these school takeovers and this kind of thing. And so I think that we have to make sure that we are being honest and having honest conversations about what's really happening, versus trying to see, well, education is one of the money-making entities in America. There's three growth industries in America. There's the jail system, there's education, there's healthcare. You mess with any one of those three, and you watch all the rich people go crazy. So that's where we are. So here's an opportunity. There's a lot of money in education. So we have, there's the dollars on, I'm hearing $16,000 a kid, $9,000. Our children are money. They are seats to people. And so that's just, I see that as wrong. And that's not the direction that we need to be going. And what we should stop putting dollar signs on our children's backs.
Thanks. I wanted to give you a chance to address something. When you filled out your survey for Chalkbeat, you acknowledged that you erred in including some material in your answer that was not produced by you. Would you like to just explain what occurred there to everyone here? Right.
It was just clearly a mistake on my part, or on our part rather, trying to get that in after speaking with Haley and encouraging. She's wanted me to get that in quick as possible. And with this campaign, you're up early in the morning and late at night. So decided to try to get that done and get it in. And the wrong information was sent. And I wish I could have had the opportunity to correct it. I mean, it was a mistake. I know all of our media outlets here make those mistakes, and they get to pull those retractions. I just didn't get to make a retraction.
Well, yeah, indeed. You did give us a statement explaining what occurred. Do any of your opponents want to raise concerns about what happened with his survey? Does anyone think that he needs to explain further, or that it disqualifies him for the office or anything like that? Or should we just move on? Okay, thank you. So this next section of the agenda, I'm going to ask some questions that anyone or all of you are permitted to answer. If you want to be the first one to answer, simply just raise your hand, or if you want to be the next one to answer, raise your hand. So the first question is this: what needs to be different in the classroom in IPS, not in the State House, not in the central office, not even in the students' homes? Like, what needs to be different in the classroom that will help better prepare IPS students for life? Who'd like to start by answering that question? Go ahead, Josh.
Sure. So for me, I mean, it kind of goes back to technology and the opportunities there. This summer, like I said before, I was running our trial for economics courses, so I was teaching micro and macroeconomics courses online. One of the great things about that for me was being able to see the data behind it on what's going on with the students, when they're taking the classes, when they're watching the lecture videos that I'm producing, when they're doing their homework, and when they're successful and not successful in doing those types of things. There's a few other things that we learned with that process. One of them is that online education isn't really a great primary tool for students. For students who are really motivated, they tend to do really well in online classes. For students that are maybe less motivated, they tend to do particularly worse than they would otherwise. And so when I look at that, I see an opportunity to use that for remediation, for bringing students along, for giving them opportunities to have tutoring alongside. And one of the things I like about that is that it opens it up for the teachers. It allows the teachers to be a little more independent within the classroom, which is, I think, something that all of us would like to give the teachers. And on the back end, it's going to give the students a lot more opportunity to stay with their class, to have the remediation when they need it, right at the exam time or right before it, right after it, and to keep them with their class moving forward within the system. So one of the things that I've seen that's been really successful in my classes, one of the things that I know that I've read about is very successful in K-12 schools. It's not that we're not doing it, we are doing it within IPS, but I want to see that expanded to a much faster degree across all of our classes.
Thank you. I think, Mr. Brett, you wanted to say something as well on that?
A little bit more simpler than that. I think that we have to start with the teacher that's in the classroom who, one, wants to be there, who has a culturally competent background. They're able to address our children and know who they are teaching and make adjustments. And I know we have all different kind of things that teachers have to do, and they have a time limit to do certain things. But if those teachers don't build relationships with those children, they are going to continue to have problem after problem after problem in terms of getting them to where they're supposed to be. And so I think that's one of the things that's missing in the classroom, because there's so much pressure for them to teach to a test, that the teacher now forgets to build relationships, and maybe they only have time to do it with one or two children who do that, but then we rush them off to get to another class and that kind of thing. But I think that relationship building is one of the key things that's missing in the classroom.
I think, Mr. Hampton, you might have your hand up next.
Yeah, and I'd like to, and to add to that, I'd like to see a greater focus on teaching versus testing. There's so much focus on I-step tests and doing well with I-step tests, but I want to make sure our children are actually learning in the classroom, and to measure learning and measure cognitive, what does not get measured does not get accomplished. And so how do we know the children are, the child who came in at a first grade reading level is now reading at second grade reading level, and how can we measure that better? And Dr. Batts did mention, I do want to mention that it's important that we recognize the statistics are real, that 65% of the students in IPS are African American, about 20% are Hispanic, and then, you know, of course, the numbers broaden beyond that, but 70% of our teachers are Caucasian. Now, I don't have a problem with any teacher who cares about our children, but we do have to make sure that cultural sensitivities are there, and we want to make sure that the population that we're serving are being represented. I'd like to see more Latino and Hispanic leadership within the administration within IPS, and I think we're lacking some of those cultural paradigms and necessities that Dr. Batts so eloquently mentioned.
Annie, if I made you go first, so you haven't had a chance to talk in quite a while. Did you want to take a crack at this question?
Sure. I just think, I agree with a lot of what's said. Technology, a handful of our schools still don't have Wi-Fi. That's unacceptable. It's not equitable. You can look at schools that aren't equitable as far as field trips that they take or even the playgrounds that they have. We need to make sure we're equitable across the district at our schools. Class sizes are a big issue. A couple years ago, we raised our class sizes, and I argued against that. I think we added 2 kids in kindergarten level, and at the time, I asked the superintendent's like, oh, it's only 2 kids, and I remember saying, well, wait, what if we dropped 2 kids off with you in your office all day? How much work would you get done? It's a big difference. Resources in the classroom so the teachers can focus on teaching and not if they have copy paper or tissues or anything like that. And I fully agree with Hampton here that testing is a huge problem right now.
Marian Sullivan?
Yeah, so one of the really basic things that we need to make sure is in every classroom is high expectations. We've heard that over and over, that plays out in student achievement. And it seems like something you would assume is present in every classroom, but it's not. And then also, the data that we do get from kids needs to inform instruction. It's not an isolated collection to fill some reports. It's actually driving the activities that are happening between the teachers and the students. And the professional development for the teachers is related directly to the things that they need help with based on their instruction and how well they're doing with the kids. So just being very, very strategic about those things.
Thank you. Next question. Does it matter if candidates in this race are receiving much larger contributions than we've seen in past IPS races? Does it matter, and why or why not? Anyone like to take a crack at that? Annie Roof?
Personally, it doesn't matter to me how much someone raises, but it does matter to me where that money is coming from. And that's why I decided not to take out of state funds. That matters to me. I think the community in which I live and reside should be the ones supporting me to bring me into office.
Anyone else want to take a crack at that question? No? Marian Sullivan?
Yeah, I'm, sitting up here probably the recipient of the most money, not necessarily the most out-of-state money, but I am honored by the endorsements that I have. And to me, it is very encouraging to know that major organizations like the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, which has thousands of employees and thousands of families, engaged in our community. I work with them on other issues. It's a compliment and an honor to me. Stand for Children, parents selected based on our responses, the people that they wanted to endorse. Just got another endorsement yesterday from the realtors, which I don't remember getting that running for the State House. And I think it's telling the community that this race is really important, and it's really important to a lot of people beyond just the people who have kids in the system who are, primary beneficiaries of great schools, but so is the rest of our city and the rest of our region.
Ramon Batts, you want to add?
I think that it's telling certain communities that it's important. If you look at where the money comes from, it's telling certain communities. And when
Can
you
be
talk about
explicit, what communities are you talking about?
Well, because those who are affluent and who are able to pay, you got to pay to play. This is what they say. I didn't mean to rhyme all of that, but it worked out. So we're not, I'm not disillusioned, let me say, and I don't think that those in my community who know better are disillusioned. Again, I said it before, that you have business men and women who are putting a lot of money for a school board race that's going to yield a person $6,000 for that year, and they have not done anything at all to make sure that the graduation rates are going up, that children get to school on time, that our bus drivers have what they need. They haven't done any of that. And so now you raise all of this money. Why? To make sure that we get our person in there to do what we need them to do. And so if you look around the country, this isn't new, that all this money are going to these other races around the country, so they go in and make sure. Well, I don't want Indianapolis to end up looking like New Orleans and those people down there begging to get their public school system back.
Thank you. Did anybody else want to address this? Mr. Hampton?
I'm happy and proud to say that all of my support has come from right here in Indianapolis, and I'm not endorsed by anyone outside of the state of Indiana, no particular interest group, and just citizens who would like to see me on the school board and support my efforts.
Thank you. Josh Owens, you're the only one who didn't address this. Did you want to say anything?
No, I think it's all been said
Okay.
here. I think we're all, we've all worked hard for the support that we do get. I think we're all going door to door. We're all kind of doing that grassroots effort. Obviously, there's a disparity in the amount of money that everybody has, but that exists in campaigns.
So one of the issues that's been talked about quite a bit in this race is this new notion of how IPS might try to partner with charter schools in one way or another. So do you believe in partnering with charter schools, that it could help IPS, or do you think that would be harmful to IPS, and why? Would anybody like to take a crack at their feelings on that? Annie Roof?
I think that IPS has already partnered with charter schools, and it's been beneficial with Enlace at Gambold, and we just rented out space. That's why at the time I was supportive of House Bill 1321, because it gave us an opportunity to rent out our space to charter schools instead of just giving it to them for $1. However, I don't support chartering IPS schools, and I think that somewhere along the line, partnership became giving up our schools, and that's not how I see partnerships.
Anyone else want to take a crack at this question? Go ahead, Mary Ann Sullivan.
I think I've said before, I think that more tools in your toolbox is a good thing. So I think every situation is an individual situation, and so I don't make blanket statements, never work with this group, never work with that group. I think that we have to be really smart about the opportunities that come before us and consider each proposal on its own merits.
Go ahead, Josh Owens.
Yeah, I think what I would just add to that is I agree we should be able to use this tool. I think it helps us, anyone who is elected to the board, it helps us as board members. I think the biggest thing that we need to recognize, though, is that we do have really good schools within IPS. Some of them are these charter type of schools. Some of them are outside the charter system. We can be spending the same resources to expand those schools that are already working within IPS with IPS teachers and to get more students into those schools. I would vastly prefer doing that over kind of taking new steps and bringing new partners in. It's not that I'm against it, I'm very much for it, but we've got some things that are working. Let's expand those right now.
Can you give me an example of something that you would like to see expanded?
Sure. I mean, I think you look at Crispus Attucks School that's doing some great stuff within kind of that magnet program. I think that there's a wait list for a number of schools within the magnet system. For me, when I look at that, I say there shouldn't be a wait list, there shouldn't be lotteries. We should expand the number of positions that are available expand the number of seats that are available within those schools to make sure that any kid who wants to and can attend, that they will do that, right? So we take those resources and we put them into those schools instead of looking for extra partnerships that would work there. I look at those type of schools as ones that we have a clear success rate and that we should expand.
Roman Betts, I think you want to add something?
I don't think that the partnering with charter schools is what IPS should be a part of. One, to me, it's because we're in the age where we are, charter schools is IPS competition. And so because you have students who are leaving IPS and going to charter schools and staying or coming back after the ADM count, which the money stays at the charter school and it does not come back to IPS. So I don't see any reason why we should be partnering with charter schools. I think we need to be strengthening what we have and using the space that we have to expand programs that we have. And I'm glad Josh has jumped on my replication thing that I brought it to him at the last forum a couple ago. So it's trying to help him out. But certainly replicating our schools is what we should be about, because we know that it works. I even listened today to the gentleman at the luncheon I was at today. That's great data that he had for charter schools and out of charter schools, but that data didn't come out of the public schools. Even though you don't want to sit there and go through all that bureaucracy and the headache that you got to put up with a strong public school, but if you're looking to make sure that the public school students are going to make it, then you sit there for 2, 3 years, 4 years if you need to, and gather that data and figure out what needs to happen in our classrooms.
Thank you. I think, David Hampton, did you want to say something on this?
Sure.
You're the only one who did.
And I just want to continue to reiterate, I am pro whatever model best serves to educate our children. I think that for us, for anyone to be anti any model, whether narrow-based or broad-based, that best serves our children is a mistake. And I think we need to be open to any model that will best serve our children. And that's just the bottom line for me.
Mary Ann Sullivan?
I would like to say amen to Pastor Hampton. You got an amen. And I also think that having been involved in replication of models, it's not as easy as it seems to be on surface. And so it's not just about finding a good model, it's about creating the environment where that model can thrive and within a school community. And that's a little different task than just replication, and particularly top-down replication has not been a particularly successful way of changing schools.
Anyone else on this topic? Go ahead, Annie Roof, and then we'll go to Bats.
I agree that replication is not always easy, and if you do it too fast, you divide the talent. You just can't multiply the programs because you divide the talent. However, I adamantly stand against businesses making money off the backs of our children, and that can happen when you charter. So whatever tool, thank you, that tool I just can't get on board with. And I don't think that businesses giving money to the school board race makes it seem that we're important. I think it makes it seem that we're profitable. And that's what people are looking for.
Okay, I think Ramon Batts and then Mr. Hampton, go ahead.
Because I wanted to, I understand that we are all for whatever is going to help our children. I know that athletics is something that helps children graduate. Well, they can't play basketball and football all day long. It would be a great model to have, but that's not anything they can do all day long. We have to have moderation in everything that we do in order to get to where we need to get to. And so a charter school and the House Bill 1321 and this thing, we didn't need that. We didn't need that to do Project Restore. We didn't need that to put the math, science, and magnet in place at Tech High School. We didn't need that to put Christmas Attics in place. We didn't need it to put Shortridge Public Law and Policy. We didn't need that House Bill 1321. It is something to make sure that those who are coming in to partner get a return on their investment.
Okay. Any last word? Okay, let's move on. So there's been suddenly a lot of interest in preschool in this state in 2014. The governor got interested in it, so we now have a preschool pilot program coming January. The mayor got interested in it. He's trying to put together a preschool program supported by the mayor's office and the city and via philanthropy. And IPS has also been expanding preschool over the last year or two. So I'm wondering if folks could tell us, what do we think IPS's role is when it comes to preschool? What's the right role for IPS to play? David Hampton?
And that's something dear to my heart, because I think it's critical that Indiana particularly begin to look at, first of all, the compulsory age in Indiana is 7 years old to start school. I think that's a critical mistake. I think we're starting our children behind the starting line, and it's hard to catch up if they can ever catch up. I think we're investing in failure, because we can justify not spending $80 million on preschool, but we can justify spending millions of dollars to build a new prison complex. I think there's something wrong with our priorities. I critically think that's a problem, and if we have a $2 billion surplus, then I think that rather than boast about that, the problem with that is none of it's being spent on early childhood education. I think that's a critical problem.
Others on preschool? Josh Owens and then Ramon Batts?
Sure. I mean, I would just say that, and I don't know about all of you, when I'm out there talking with parents, this is probably easily I think the biggest issue for parents that they're talking about, or at least asking me about. I know it's very popular in the news right now, but I think it's an issue that people are very concerned about and very interested in. The thing that, and I agree with everything that you were saying there, I think the thing that I would highlight is, just instituting preschool in and of itself isn't enough, right? We have to be able to take those individuals that we're investing in and that we're giving that opportunity, and we also have to give them a great kindergarten and then a great first grade and a great second grade and a great third grade education. So early childhood education in and of itself isn't the solution. It is only the solution if we give it to students and then we partner it with great education that comes immediately after it. And so that's the most important thing that we can do with any expansion of early childhood education.
Thank you. Ramon Batts?
Certainly preschool is something that probably would have helped me a little bit better, and I could have got out of general math at Tech High School. And so I'm certainly a proponent of it, but we need to go a little bit deeper than that, and to make sure that the parents of those preschoolers are doing what they need to do prior to preschool. And so we have to have education that's going on at home, and that needs to be put to the forefront, because that's how we made it. That's how we all here today, because education was going on at home.
But that's not IPS's realm. What can IPS do about the home?
But certainly IPS can do something about it.
Tell us, what can they do?
Well, you gotta insist on information being out, and so there shouldn't be any backroom deals. But you have to insist that parents have information that they need. You partner with hospitals. Everybody has to go to the hospital to have a baby. Everybody's given a big old packet of information to take home. They buying books, and nowhere in those books is telling them about reading to your child and this is going to happen. You got to have information that's disseminated.
But again,
to
IPS
parents.
doesn't run the hospitals. You're going to be on the IPS school board. What can IPS do?
That's what I'm telling you. The IPS school board can, as a school board member, that's one of the things that I can push for. That our information, our literature, if we're going to partner with charter schools, and we can partner with the hospital, and we can partner with clinics and those people. And so that's exactly what I'm saying. I think that we have that in our purview, and we're able to disseminate information to get out and to ask our community, ask our mayor to be a proponent of that information.
Thank you. I'm going to let anyone else very quickly say anything, and then we got to get to questions from the audience. Annie Roof?
Thanks. I just want to say I think IPS is doing a great job with preschool. It's been implemented since I became on the board. I'm not taking full credit. We had a great board. We brought in Peggy Hinckley, who was our intern, who had great preschool knowledge when we started the program. But half of our kindergartners have preschool through IPS. I don't want to kill the neighborhood preschool program. But Hampton's right. I mean, if the city doesn't make us students go to kindergarten, full-day kindergarten's not mandatory. That's a problem there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, unless anybody else wants to jump in, I'm going to go to audience questions. So we have a couple people walking around who will take your cards, your question cards on both sides. So they're waving their hands, and they'll bring them to me. Let's remember to be respectful of the process here. This is the process we decided to choose. Thank you very much. They'll come get them to you. Ask the people we're handing it out. Okay, let's, if I can have a few. Let's please be respectful. Thank you. Thank you. Here's a few more. First question. How will you retain effective teachers? Many have chosen to leave or they want to leave. How can we change that? David Hampton?
First of all, they need raises. They need higher pay.
Marianne Sullivan?
They don't just need raises, they need career ladders, they need places to go other than going into administration. So we need to be able to make teaching a much more rich experience with lots of options for educators to be master teachers, to play other roles within the school that are still instructionally focused.
Josh Owens?
Yeah, I agree. That development part is a big portion of it. I think the higher pay is also an important part. I think one of the things I know Annie's talked about with the board is kind of getting back to annual cost of living increases and that type of thing. I was actually just talking with a teacher the other day about this and just kind of doing some back of the napkin kind of calculations. That would probably work out to about $7.5 million that would be needed to give probably like a 2.5% increase in pay to teachers. On a budget of $233 million, if we're just actually looking at this, I mean, I think it's great to say we need to increase pay. I agree. And it's also good to just put some numbers on it. I think kind of looking at what that would be about 2.5% of the IPS budget. And we can look at savings, right? That is something that is doable. That is something that we can achieve. And I can tell you as a board member, it's something that I would make as one of my very top priorities for all teachers and staff members.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that question? Another interesting question we got here is, what about ineffective principals? What can the IPS and the board do to deal with principals who are not measuring up? Ramon Batts?
Well, one that has to be defined as what is ineffective, and so because if you have an ineffective principal, you have an ineffective school, and so you have some things that are going to trickle down from that principal. But I think that some principals need to be called to the carpet in terms of what they're doing, and to make sure that, here's the thing, I think that principals are evaluating teachers, but I don't know that, and this is just something, I don't know that teachers are evaluating principals. And so I think that, you know, when you have, there's some things when you go to certain, like probably when we leave here today, it might be a survey to evaluate Chalkbeat and everyone else about this forum. So teachers should have an opportunity to evaluate principals as well based on some honest and fair information in terms of what they see in a leader, because they're taught things in the classroom about, taught things in school about when they're being a teacher and what leaders look like and this kind of thing. But then when they get to the school, that leader is nothing like what they were taught inside their classroom. So teachers need to have a say-so in terms of what makes a principal effective.
Marianne Sullivan?
I do think we need to make a lot more expansive use of surveys for parents, for students, for teachers, for administrators. There's a lot of good work that's been done on those kinds of surveys, and I think that's part of having a really comprehensive community engagement policy in your school. So all of those pieces go together, and so that's one piece of the principles. But we have a pipeline issue with talented leaders, and it's not unique to Indianapolis. It's a national issue, and so we're out there as a district competing all over with other cities and other parts of the country. So we do have to encourage more local leadership programs to have homegrown principals, but also our HR department needs to be good about going out and finding talent.
Annie Roof?
My family just left. I was going to say bye. That's all. No, I'm just kidding. I think that most principals work on contracts, so you can't get rid of a principal unless they have a proper evaluation, and that's one thing IPS has failed at for several years. We need to properly evaluate the principals that are ineffective and replace them.
Anyone else want to address that question? So I got several questions all along this same theme. And some of you mentioned this in our earlier conversation. There's a concern about the disparity in discipline for African American children and children who are not African American. African American children are disciplined at a higher rate in IPS, and also in many school districts. It's a national, state, and district level problem. So what can the school board do to try to address that problem? Roman Batts?
Well, one, you got to have an honest conversation with your superintendent, and the principals who are hiring teachers. That's one. Two, you got to take an honest look at who's in that classroom, because you have a number of teachers, and we know we've talked about some 70+% of teachers are white, and you got to be real about it. America, at some point, when they look at a black boy or a black girl who looks a little bit different than they do, or who doesn't quite measure up, they've already formed an opinion about that individual. And so we have to make sure that this is not happening. And the school board we cannot say, oh, we don't want to micromanage. No, forget that. Those are our children. And we hire the superintendent. The superintendent needs to make sure that everything is everything inside those buildings, and those children are not getting kicked out of the classroom just because they speak and say hi.
Mary Ann Sullivan?
Yeah. This is back to data again. When people say data, a lot of times they read, people hear testing, but data and testing are not the same thing, and numbers don't lie about a lot of things. And so if you identify these disparities within the school, that's where it needs to be addressed, and that's where professional development responds to what has been identified as a problem. And so you don't treat all schools as if they're the same, because some schools may not be experiencing the same level as others. So again, being very strategic about addressing the problems that are happening that are identified by data from those schools.
David Hampton?
Again, and I think that the issue comes down to diversity. Again, as I mentioned, that the teaching population should also represent the population it serves. And culturally, we have to have the understanding that if a child didn't eat breakfast, and if they saw their father beat on their mother, or they don't have a father in the home at all, or they're dealing with some major stress and trauma because they may be dealing with poverty, these things should be taken into account. And so children, I think, there's little patience for some African American children, and so they are vilified and demonized at higher rates than any other culture, and that's just the truth. And they're suspended at higher rates, and they are disciplined at higher rates, and that's a reality that we have to seriously change. And then the flip side, let's be honest, when a teacher calls a parent in for a teacher-parent conference because their child just cussed them out in the classroom, well then, they meet the parent, and the parent cusses them out at the teacher-parent conference. So we also have to be fair about what's going on to make sure we empower parents, educate parents, and the public school is just that. It's public. So it's not just the school board's responsibility to make sure we care for our children. This is the community school. So the community, churches, parents, teachers, administrators, and all of us have to play a part in improving our school system and making sure that our children are not victimized, but they are given a fair chance.
Others want to address this question?
I think that was
so this question is about teacher evaluations. You might recall last year, most of the teachers in the state, nearly all of them, frankly, were, were rated effective. That was also true in IPS, even in schools where children did not pass tests or do score particularly well. So the question is it possible for a teacher to be good and effective and still have students who fail classes, fail high-stakes tests, or drop out of school? Annie Roof.
Yes, because we have teachers who teach at schools who have a 100% turnover rate. That means the kids that they have in their class on the first day of school, not a one of them is there on the last day of school. So, absolutely.
Others?
Sure.
Josh Owen?
Yeah, part of what we're looking at is growth within those numbers as well. So growth and development within the students, or the performance growth as well. I think when we look at those teacher evaluations, there's a lot of things that go into a great school. Good results is definitely one of the things that goes into a good school, but so is keeping teachers there and having low turnover within the teacher ranks, having a good work ethic, right? Having kind of good kind of individuals within the team that just have a good morale as well. All of those we should value as well, right up there with kind of results. So we just need to be smart about how we're using those results and the way that we're using the measurement on those. I would also just say a good portion of that is kind of decided at the state level, and we need to be kind of very honest of that as well. There's only so much that we can do on some of those things. And so I think we just need to be sure that we're kind of cognizant about that as well.
Well, the district does, however, create its own evaluation program. There are parameters from the state, but
And
there's
how
a
it would
lot
be
of variability among districts.
Exactly, and how it would be used. And so we just need to be smart about that, but there is some constraints at the state level as well.
Thanks. Mary Ann Sullivan?
I was going to say, I think teacher evaluation results get more stable over time, and it tells you more over time, and not a single snapshot of 1 year of what happened. So when you see trends that consistently come up with a particular person year after year, that's an indication that maybe there's a bigger problem. And so your first response is to try to help that person get better at the things they're not doing well. And then if that doesn't work, then you move on to other things. But there should not be an evaluation that is just happens one time and there's no room for professionalism in it.
Ramon Batts?
Sir, I'm concerned that you would have a number of those students who would be failing a class. If you have 20 students in that class and 19 of them have Fs, and for me as a teacher, I'm going to look at me first. I'm not waiting for anybody to come and evaluate me, or I'm saying I did all I can do. I don't know if I did all I could do. They all have Fs. I didn't go to school so that all my students could have Fs. So I want to, as a teacher, make sure that I'm partnering with parents, that I'm doing everything that I can do, that the school board is backing me up, the district is helping me to connect with parents, because I'm seeing this early. It's 4 weeks in the school, and this child has not passed one test. I just can't say that this one is making it and I'm doing my job. Can't do that. And I know I love teachers. They didn't back me up. I mean, Anna Ruth, but I love teachers, and I think that they're doing a great job. However, you cannot put a blanket and say that everybody is effective if somebody if you have that many children failing one class at a time.
Thank you. Others want to address that question? No? Okay. This goes back to a theme we've discussed a couple times, but it had been mentioned in one of your answers that a way to deal with the disparity in discipline might be to attract more teachers of color and different kinds of teachers. Those teachers, very good teachers from those communities, are in demand. So what can IPS do to attract more, not just teachers of color, but also male teachers? Was also pointed out in the question that there's less of them, particularly given that there had been some layoffs last year in which we lost some folks in those categories. Annie Ruth, do you want to take that question?
Sure, and I think it's been brought up before, so I think several of us have had this idea in our heads. We're not just looking at African American here. Hispanic are 22%, the largest growing population in IPS, yet we have no Hispanic administrators. So I think we need to create a pathway. We're educating students who could become educators. We need to create a pathway that we can get them through college and entice them to come back to us.
Okay, can we please be respectful and let the candidates answer? Anyone else like to answer this question?
I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Josh
guess,
Owens?
Yeah, I would just say I think we're kind of all on the same page here, that we could use a lot more kind of in that space. I think we probably also all agree that no matter what, we want to hire the best qualified candidates for each of these positions. So the most important thing that we can do here, I guess in my opinion, is to widen that funnel, right? We need more applicants in the door, and so anything that we can do to partner with either the mayor's office or outside groups that can bring in more applicants, it's going to be really useful for us.
Others? Ramon Batts?
I don't think that we have to go outside of Indianapolis and to recruit and find teachers. We have great teachers right here in our city, and we also have the wherewithal to and the means to make sure that we're putting an incubator together so that teaching becomes one of the things that children want to do when they graduate from high school, and not something secondary when they get to college and, I want to teach. We should have a school that's helping kids learn how to be teachers and pushing them toward that regard as well. And so I don't think we have to go look out. I know that we're talking about this brain freeze in the city. We need to lift that brain freeze, but we got some very intelligent people in this city who are teachers and who need to be given an opportunity and who need to have training and who need to have someone to back them as well, just like others are being backed.
Anyone else want to address that question? So I think we may be down to our final question. This question is about student behavior. Can you candidates tell us something about your ideas for strategies to improve student behavior so that it's easier to teach in the classroom? Somebody's got to have an idea on that. Go ahead, Ramon Batts.
Well, since I'm the only one still working with the children, I guess I'm the best one to answer this question. I raised my hand first, so I get to. Well, it's when you're talking about discipline. One, we cannot have this zero tolerance policy because if we have a zero tolerance policy in school system, we need to have a zero tolerance policy across the board. Then all of us will be out of jobs and everything else. And so that needs to be lifted. And so there are certain things, yes, that children need not do in school, right? But again, that child just watched dad beat up mom. Just watch mom go out the door to prostitute for the night. Didn't wake up with parents in the home. You have a number of issues that you got to deal with before you can even get to the point where you can teach that child. So understand them, and you won't be trying to kick them out of school so much. The other thing is the pressure that's put on the school system to teach to the tests and that kind of thing, the teachers, and so they have all that pressure. So they don't have time to really try to build that relationship or try to find out about them. That needs to be lifted. So you want to deal with discipline. It's just not just keep them in class. No, you gotta make sure that teachers are able to do what needs to be done.
Others who'd like to answer this question? David Hampton.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I do think that we have to raise the expectation levels of our children. And I think we can do that. Children will rise to the level that we raise them to. And excellence should not be an exception. It should be the expectation. And our children will rise to that if we help them to do so.
Andy Roof.
They're both right. I mean, these kids are acting out because something is going on. But as long as we allow the state to label our kids as F students at F schools, they're going to walk into that building knowing and feeling that. We have to change that.
Mary Ann Sullivan?
I think ultimately the school culture that is created becomes self-maintaining, and that's the tough part, is getting it to that culture. But once you get it there, then so many of the problems of kids acting out go away because of the expectations. It's very clear, and it becomes ingrained in the students that that's how you act at that place. And I've seen it time and time again, and it's really hard work to establish that culture, but it can be done.
Josh Owen, would you like to have the last word?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think what we're all saying is that we need to, I mean, there's two goals that we have as in a school, right? It's to educate students, and it's to graduate those students into the next phase of life so that they are prepared and they're ready to do that. Anything that we can do to help do both of those things at the same time is going to help every single student and every single school.
I just want to say thank you to our panelists up here. This was a very rich conversation, I think. I appreciate everyone's commitment to talk about the issues and willingness to be here tonight. Thank you, audience, for some very good questions. Thank you. Hold on just a second. Just a quick bit of direction here. We'll take a short break. These 5 candidates from the at-large race are going to leave the stage. The 5 candidates from the 2 district races are going to join us, and we're going to mic them up, and then we will restart very soon. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. At 7:05, we'll reconvene. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for being with us for the second segment of tonight's program. My name is Jackie Needus. I'm the CEO of your public library here in Indianapolis, and we do appreciate you spending your evening with us here and our partners to take a look at the IPS School Board race. This is the 20th time that we have held a conversation about education here at the Public Library with our good partners at WFYI Public Media. This evening, we're also honored to have some additional friends and sponsors making this program possible. Chalkbeat Indiana has joined us, and we also have additional support this evening from Teachers Treasures and from Stand for Children. All of these folks are folks who care, as you do, about the future of education in our community. I'm going to skip through all of the wonderful stuff about why libraries care about education. I hope you believe me when I say that. And we're going to try to get right to the meat of this second half. And in that case, we will ask Scott Elliott to come to the mic again and lead the discussion with our next round of school board candidates. Scott, all yours.
Thank you. So a lot of candidates running for school board, so many that we had to split them into two groups, 5 each. There's 10 total candidates, and there are 3 races. As I said in the beginning of the first half, I really think it's courageous when people put themselves forward to run for election for public office. It's not a very easy thing to do. So I think we owe them some respect. Please treat them respectfully, and let's all try to keep our passions in check as we let this discussion unfold so we can all learn about them. Again, if you are tweeting this event, the hashtag is electips if you'd like to use that to tweet. And also, just a note, this is being broadcast live on the internet via WFYI's website, so you can find it live there. It will be posted on WFYI's website in the next several days, sometime in the next several days. So now let me quickly introduce the candidates. I did not do as good a job of putting them in the perfect order as I had intended to. I messed up, but that's okay. I'll introduce them by their races. So we have Michael Brown, is the incumbent in District 5, and his opponent is Lanier Eccles on the very end over there in District 5. Then in District 3, we have the incumbents, Samantha Adair White, right here in the first seat. Her opponents are James Turner, seated next to her, and Kelly Bentley, seated in between the other candidates over there. So as with the first grouping, the format this time will be I will give each of the candidates 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Then I will ask each candidate some questions. Then I will ask some general questions that all the candidates can answer. And then if you have questions as they go along, please write them on note cards. You can look around. Folks will wander down the sides here and hold up their hands if you need a note card or if you have one filled out and would like to hand in. They'll come stepping down just as we approach the question period. I think you can also get a note card at the very back if you want to go get one now. Okay, so we are going to begin with District 5. So Michael, you will be or actually, you know what? Let's for introductions, let's just go in order since it doesn't matter which race we do first. So why don't you go ahead, Samantha Adair White? You can be first. Introduce yourself in 3 minutes.
Okay. Hello, I'm Commissioner Adair White. I'm a proud mother of 2 children. Which one attends IPS School 84. I'm not a politician. I'm a parent that loves kids, that want the best for our kids. I hear a lot of people stating that, Samantha, why did you join this race? I started this journey about 8 years ago when I decided that I needed to get into the schools to see exactly what was going on. I believe every child deserves a great education. I don't care where you come from. I'm one of those kids of a single parent home. Didn't know if we were gonna have anything to eat when I got home. And I made myself a promise that if I ever made it out, that I would give back and do all that I can do for everybody kids. It's our kids, our responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. James Turner.
Hello, my name is James Turner. I'm an IPS kid myself. I went to School 60, I went to Short Ridge, and I went to Broad Ripple. I really wanted to run because I knew, first of all, let me tell you, I work at Fall Creek Academy, which is a charter school. I understood that I was going to take that job, but I still wanted to be part of my children and the kids that I service education. So I thought the way to do that was to run for school board. But my real reason for running, I don't think the community has been represented well on the school board. I plan to be a voice for those students. Their parents don't come to the meetings. Their parents are the drug users. I want to be that voice because they deserve to be heard too. It's a lot of variables and a lot of different things that we could do to help our community. This is just the one that I chose.
Michael Brown.
All right, my name is Michael Brown. I have been on the IPS School Board for 16 years. My story stays the same as it did 16 years ago. I started hearing a lot of negative information about the school that my children attended. I am the parent of 5 IPS graduates. I now have grandchildren that are in the district. I have nieces and nephews that are in the district. I want to make sure that our students, our children, have the right representation and they have someone that's going to be in their corner and that's going to defend them and give them the opportunity to be successful. I believe in taking away excuses. I was the child of a single parent household, well below the poverty level, so I don't want to hear anybody using that for an excuse. I was fortunate enough to attend college on a basketball scholarship. So when I look at athletics, I don't look at it as a game. I look at it as an opportunity to advance yourself. I want to make sure those doors are open for our young people. And when you hear me refer to my 30,000 children, I'm counting your children in that. Because one thing about it is that I only know one way to treat your child, as if they were my own. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Bentley.
Hi, my name is Kelly Bentley. I've grown up in Indianapolis. I went through Indianapolis Public School, School 84, and Broad Ripple High School. My children attended school, the Montessori School at School 91, Shortridge and Broad Ripple. And I have a niece and nephew in the district. My father was a student at Tech, or a graduate from Tech. I'm running again for IPS School Board because I love my city. And in order for our city to be a great city, we have to have strong neighborhoods. And strong neighborhoods have great public schools in them. IPS has some wonderful schools. My kids went to some of them. But I want to make sure that there are great public schools in all of the neighborhoods in Indianapolis. You know, as I said, I've got over 20 years experience as an advocate for public education and for IPS families, and I have over a decade of experience on the IPS School Board. I have an idea of what works and what doesn't work, and so I want to get back on the board. I'm excited about rejoining the board and moving the district forward.
Thank you. Lanier Eccles.
Good evening. Again, my name is Lanier Eccles. I'm running as an educator and a former Indianapolis Public School teacher out of frustration. My first job was at John Marshall, and I started in July. And I was a reading teacher. I didn't receive books until October. I'm frustrated. Again, at John Marshall, I had students that were literally sitting in my 8th grade class that read on a 2nd and 3rd grade level. Our children are falling through the cracks. I'm running out of frustration. Our children deserve an excellent education, and I am running because our children, in every neighborhood, despite their zip code, we need to make sure they have access to a quality education by any means necessary.
Thank you. Those are all the candidates. I'm now going to start with District 5. So I'll start with the comment with Michael Brown right here in the middle. And then I'll ask you and your opponent some questions, and then I'll do the other race. It's a little bit weird in this case. We have 2 separate races. Mr. Brown, you were part of a really strong majority on the school board while Eugene White was the superintendent. That majority was very opposed to some of the changes that IPS has done since, so that they contemplate now. Were those the right positions for that group took that you were a part of then, and do you still believe them now?
You know, first off, let's be honest, nothing could be further from the truth. Many of the people stand around and talk about reforms, but as Kelly Bentley will tell you, we put a lot of reforms through in my 16 years on the school board. It's not opposing reforms, it is, let's get the definition correct. Reform does not mean restructuring. And in a lot of times, when we talk about reforming, we're talking about replicating successful programs. And I heard the earlier candidates talk about Gambold and Seidner and the CFIs, and those are very successful programs. But we also have schools that are not magnets that are performing admirably. Jonathan Jennings School 109, Ernie Pyle School 90, Carl Weil School 79. We have schools that are neighborhood schools that are performing admirably. Those schools we need to look at replicating as well. We need to get inside and figure out what are they doing differently from a school 3 miles away and replicate what is happening in them.
You would agree, though, that you're often one vote opposed to, you're not always with the majority currently when they have moved in some new directions. For instance, some of the partnerships they've talked about or some of the personnel moves they've made. Is that fair?
The amazing thing is I was on the end of a lot of 6-1 votes when Dr. White was the superintendent as well. Because as far as I'm concerned, if it's not benefiting children, I'm going to vote no against it. I have to clearly see that this is going to enrich the lives of my children, my grandchildren, my nieces, and my nephews.
So let's talk about a specific example. We were recently talking this year about the budget, some of the things related to the IPS budget. When Kelly Bentley was on the board, she had asked the superintendent to share more budget details with the board, and he declined to do so, and you were supportive of his position. Do you wish you to push for more transparency then, or do you still think that was the right decision?
No, we had the ability to go in and access that information. We always have had. It was like I didn't want a budget packet because we had one school board member at a time that requested the whole budget, and it was over 1,200 pages. And I'm sorry, but I have a job as well as serving on the school board. I didn't have time to go through 1,200 pages. So we started seeing budget lines. As far as transparency goes, yes, I believe the books ought to be open. I believe anyone that wants to look at them ought to be able to come in and look at them. Absolutely no problem with that whatsoever.
So you're a frequent volunteer, for instance, at Northwest High School, I know is one of your personal favorite schools. There are students at that school who are having trouble succeeding. What do you think the school board can do to help those students? What's the school board's role?
That's an excellent thing. One thing, let's get it straight because a lot of people don't understand. The duties of a school board member are threefold. We approve the budget, we hire a superintendent, and we set policy. When I'm at Northwest High School, I am not there in an administrative function, nor am I there in a supervisory role. I am there to be Grandpa, Uncle Mike. I'm that guy that someone can look to and not see an authority figure. They see someone that's an advocate for them. What we need to do, though, is have conversations with our principals, our superintendent, about wraparound services that need to happen in our schools. We need to reduce class size. I mean, all of the data shows that smaller class size yields higher test scores. However, we're in a budget crunch. We're in a bit of a crunch. And one of the questionnaires that came out, we've done so many of them, spoke about would you lobby the legislature or would you put a referendum out to get more money? The whole thing is there's money in the legislature. We find money for everything else. Why can't we find money for education?
So in the case where we find out some of the budget numbers were maybe not accurate or not a fair reflection of the district's true fiscal position, how much responsibility does the board have for that?
The thing about that is, and I have to be completely honest, we were given a set of figures that were a projected budget deficit, and it was $30 million, okay? What we weren't aware of is that it was a projected deficit. I understand that if you tell me that it's a projected budget deficit, but it was laid out to us as if it was actual. Well, that's just like the budget surplus now is also a projected budget surplus. So we actually don't have that $8.4 million in the bank. And that's something that, you know, through years of serving on the board and seeing the mistakes that we have made, once that information became light to us, we went public immediately.
Lanier Eccles, I'm going to move on to you. Thank you, Michael Brown. So you serve as a dean at a charter school, is that correct?
Yes,
okay.
Dean of Students.
Thank you. I've had this question asked of me. Is it a conflict of interest to serve on the IPS school board if you're employed by a charter school? What do you think?
So that is the question of the hour. Someone asked me that question, and I said, they said, how can you serve two masters, being in a charter and running for IPS? And I would like to set the record straight. My master is the students. Ultimately, every decision I make is for the children of Indianapolis, and I don't care where they come from. And so, no, it's perceived as a conflict, but it is not, so no.
I don't think it's inconceivable that you could have to weigh in or make a decision, or at least weigh in on a situation where it could bring benefit to one and potential harm to the other. How would you handle that? If there was a decision before you which could be viewed as benefiting the district, harming charter schools, benefiting charter schools, harming the district, how would you resolve that conflict?
So if it is a vote for something like whatever charter school, specifically Carpe Diem, I would definitely have to recluse myself from that because I would not want to be in the room when that conversation is going on. That's a difficult, it's a sticky situation, but ultimately, what is best for the child? It's not the, oh, your Carpe Diem. So it's whatever is best for the child will be the ultimate decision.
Okay. You're running because
yes.
I presume that you believe that we need change in this seat on the board.
Yes.
So how could you better represent District 5?
Children learn differently. I'm representing children from throughout the district. At my little humble abode at Carpe Diem, I have 250 children that learn differently. And I am for the idea if children don't learn the way we teach, we need to change the way we teach. I'm all about being flexible, being creative, and supporting those children, using innovation to support those kids because they don't learn the way they used to. And again, my mentee shows up all the time with a different hairstyle, you know, concocted a different way. I'm like, how did you learn how to do that? And she's like, YouTube. Again, it's not mom teaching them. A lot of times it's them accessing information at different points. And so being innovative is definitely key in terms of supporting those kids.
So Carpe Diem has a very unusual model.
It does.
It's some people call it the flipped classroom. You have I think the school, I don't know how many students you have. How many students you have right now?
About 250.
Thank you, about 250, and you have, am I correct, 5 teachers?
We have yes, 5 teachers and then 4 paraprofessionals.
It's all right, it's the pressure of being on
look, I'm so
camera.
nervous, it's not even funny.
It's fine. So that sounds crazy to some people, but what you do is that you use online tools to
yes.
supplement the learning. Can you
yes.
just briefly tell us how that works and why 5 students for that many, 5 teachers, see, I get it too. 5 teachers for that many students is not a crazy idea. And then separately, is this an idea you'd like to see IPS try if you were on the board?
So what's interesting is that my students spend about half of the day on the computer getting their one-on-one education, and then they spend the other time with their teachers supporting the learning that they've had. So my students that are gifted and talented love this model because they hate students misbehave for 2 reasons typically. It's because they're gifted and talented or they're bored in the classroom. Gifted and talented and bored, or they have no idea what's going on in the class. And so rather than you put me on Front Street, the kid will flip a table over, get kicked out, rather than be told that they're stupid or be put on Front Street in front of their friends. And so with this model, children are excelling because they are able to progress as fast as they need to without being held back by that student that didn't get it. So my gifted and talented kids fly through because they're ready, they get it, they love it, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then those other students on the other end are able to take a little bit more time. They're able to rewind, they're able to repeat something. It's okay to ask the dumb question when it is you and the computer. Ask that dumb question, quote-unquote dumb question, without being put on Front Street. And so is it something I would like to be utilized? Flipped classroom technology are all tools that we need to utilize, and how to do things differently. And so yes, I do agree, not necessarily carpe diem, let that be clear.
Thank you. So you would like to see IPS try some of that? Like, is that a strategy you think would be widely useful in IPS, or do you think that's more of a niche strategy just for certain kids?
I think it's a niche strategy. I don't think it is a universal, this is how you cure. I don't think it's a magic bullet. I think it is just a niche, and some kids could utilize it, certainly.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move over to District 3 now, and I'll again start with the incumbent, Samantha Darraway, in the first seat right here. Samantha, can you tell us, you've been on the board 4 years. What accomplishment that you played a personal role in are you most proud of on the board?
I've been on the board for the last 4 years, and my goal when I first entered the board was to make sure that we redirect central office. I felt that we were too top-heavy, and we needed to make changes top-down instead of bottom-up. My goal, everybody that knows me knew that I wanted to get rid of our superintendent. I felt that it was time for change. And my biggest accomplishment is that we brought in Dr. Farabee that has an open mind to different issues. He's open to change. He sees that we're moving in a new direction. And if I can pat myself on the back, I think I have done a good job as being one of 7 that brought him in.
If you were to be elected for another term, what's your top goal of something you'd like? When I'm interviewing you in 4 years for running for re-election, then what will be the accomplishment you'll be telling us about at that point?
My top goals is to make sure that we have smaller classrooms. That's been my biggest issue since day one. We have to take care of my teachers. We can't go another 4 years without giving them a pay raise. We got to take care of our teacher assistants. We got to take care of our bus drivers. We got to take care of our children. Somehow, in some way, I think we get confused. We think that we have to take care of the superintendent first, and then everything else trickle down. But when you're trying to fix a problem, you have to start from the bottom up. You have to find out what is going on with our children. Our children see the bus driver first thing in the morning. They should be able to deal with that on a day-to-day basis positively. Then they go into the school. There's the teacher assistant or the administration there to greet the kids. And then there's my teachers that's there to try to teach them all that they can. I feel like we sometimes put them on the back burner and we say, well, they'll be okay, that's their job, that's what they're supposed to do. Well, I was always told that if you're gonna cook something, you gotta start with the basics. You got to start with, if I got a skillet and I'm about to fry something, I gotta start with the oil. So you got to start with the basics first and then move your way up. We cannot and will not continue taking care of the top people. We have to take care of our small people first.
Thanks. The voters in this case are, in a sense, looking to hire a school board member to fill this seat. On our survey that we sent you, 5 of your 11 questions you answered, it depends or maybe.
Yeah.
So let me play the role of hiring manager. Are you sure you want this job?
Of course, but I feel like when sending me a survey, I'm not going to put what I feel or how I feel because I don't want my words twisted the way that you all or some people will read it. So ask me the question personally. If I feel like this school needs a different direction than that school, then that's what I'll say. Each school model don't fit each school. So I felt like the questions was more or less, it just all depends on the individual school. It all depends on, where we're headed in that direction. I wasn't going to answer it, and I don't apologize for not answering it.
Well, let's try one of them right now.
Okay.
You said maybe you support the state voucher program. What do you mean by maybe?
Maybe. It just depends on the individual student.
No,
maybe.
Do you think that this is good policy for Indiana?
Well, I mean, it just depends on your child. I can't.
But you're a candidate for school board.
I understand that I'm a candidate for the school board, but I cannot go around and say what's good for your kid is good for my kid. If that parent feels like the voucher program is where she wants or what he wants for his child, then that's fine. I'm not going to sit here and say I agree or disagree. It just depends on the kid.
Okay. Thank you. So, whoops. Sorry, I got a little bit out of order.
That's okay.
Let's go to James Turner, since you're seated next.
No problem.
You work at a charter school.
Yes.
And I've found some of your comments interesting because it doesn't really sound like someone who works at a charter school. You, for instance, said that you didn't think charter schools were a model that would benefit IPS kids, and you said literally, quote, "There is no ideal relationship between IPS and charters." What have you learned working at a charter school this year that leads you to believe that that charter schools can't work together with IPS?
Charter schools, to me, are in competition with IPS. And the reason why I said that is because I think if you're a public education, you should be held to the same standards. You look at IPS, they can service the severe disability. They can service kids with heavy IEPs. That's what we're built to do, but I questioned that with some of the charter schools. That's my answer. That's why. Okay. I just want everybody held to the same standard.
Mm-hmm. When you worked at IPS, what did you think needed to be done in the schools you worked in to give those kids a better chance of success in life?
I got to be honest. When I first started with IPS in 2009, I figured we were going in the right direction because I was a grad coach with the Indiana Business Chamber of Commerce. And what we did, we went after the kids that were performing the lowest to try to get them up, which would in turn raise our graduation rates. And over the 3 years, I think our graduation rates went up every year. So I think those programs should have stayed, and I would want them to come back. I want to put programs back in place for that identify disengaged students, because if you look at our city now, the crime rate is running rampant, and it's a direct reflection on the schools not being a bridge to the community anymore. Now they're a bridge to big business, and that's a problem. I'm one of the people that had to bury 3 IPS students this summer. And I know if we had the graduation coach program in place, 100 black men were back in the school, because we just gotta call it like it is. If our kids see other black males that are successful, that come out of their environment, that would make them thrive. I was the same way. If it wasn't for Dennis Bland, Dr. Brown, I wouldn't be here. I really wouldn't be here. So
what sorts of, well, let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. The district has really changed a lot in the last year under Dr. Fairby, as Samantha White stated. Do you feel like it's moving toward those things, or is it moving in the wrong direction?
No, it's moving in the wrong direction.
Tell me why.
When I hear about our new administration talking about not investing as much in sports, sports is our only crime prevention for our kids. That's what we got to remember. When I hear them partner with schools that, quite frankly, don't score as high as we do, that kills me. And that question brings up, why do you think they push those scores off until after the election? All right. Let's talk about that. Because I believe the IPS scored high, if not higher, than most of those other school corporations. But they don't want you to know that until after the election, because you got people like Stand for Children, Mind Trust is giving these people money to run. So it's almost like our kids are for sale. Mm-hmm. And I'm against it. My kids go to attics. Mm-hmm. I still want to be heavily involved. So okay. I'm not against charter. I'm not against private schools. I'm just against what combining it with IPS. I think each school should stand on their own and be held to the same standards if you're taking public dollars.
Thank you. Kelly Bentley, So you were on the board for quite a long time. Was it 12 years?
12 years, yeah.
Thank you. 12 years before you did not run again in 2010. And I think what I've heard you say and read that you've said is that you left with some degree of frustration because the district had not improved over that time. So it was after you left that Eugene White departed the district and some big changes happened. So make the case that you can have more impact this time around than you did in your 12 years before.
Well, I mean, I don't think it was a case that we didn't, accomplish anything. But I was frustrated because we danced around the issues that needed to be addressed. I mean, there was, I was frustrated. There was a lack of transparency. I was frustrated at the lack of accountability. We kind of played, musical chairs every year with building leadership. And yeah, I got to the point where I felt like we were more worried about adults failing than kids failing. And I mean, that's a problem. We need to be focused on kids. And, and so I left out of frustration, but I think a lot of things have changed since then. I mean, a lot of things haven't changed. I'm still very passionate about the importance of education and that it's the great equalizer. But we've got some new board members on the school board. We've got a new leadership in the district that Dr. Farabee, who seems to want to shake things up a little bit. I mean, it's going to be a lot of hard work to transform the district, but I think that radical transformation is needed.
So tell us some of your ideas of what radical transformation would look like.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's radical, but I think it's radical as far as what, the way we've sort of structured public education. Mm-hmm. We've created this system where the career ladder is out of the schools, and we need to reverse that. The career ladder ought to be into the school. We don't need to pay people a lot of money to push papers. We can hire people out of college to do that. We need our best people in our schools, leading our schools, people that know how to develop great teaching, people that know what great teaching looks like, know how to support their great teachers. I think a lot of the frustration teachers have, and I mean this is just with talking to a lot of them, is that they feel beat up on, and that's legitimate. I mean, there's a lot of beating up that goes on, and it's not fair. And they also don't feel like they're being supported, and oftentimes they're not being supported in their own schools. And so I think that we've got to double down on the focus of having great leaders in our schools and hold those people accountable.
Since 2010, you've become a leader in the school reform movement here in Indianapolis. You helped found Democrats for Education Reform. Mm-hmm. So what have you learned in that work that you think could help you as a school board member this time?
Well, I worked with Democrats for Education Reform for a year, and I'm proud to be part of the group that formed them here. I think it's a great opportunity to talk to other people that really feel the same kind of passion. I never ran across anyone that was anti-education or anti-public education. They were pro-quality education, and I think that it was an opportunity to network with people that have worked in other places around the country just to see what's working, what's not working, because urban districts across the country are facing the same challenges. And I want IPS to be the one that gets it right.
Can you give us an example of something you saw elsewhere in the country in that time of learning that you think would be useful to try right here in Indianapolis?
I think that the movement towards decentralization and really giving leaders in schools more autonomy, and some people think that's a new idea, and it's not. I mean, I think that if you go back 50 years in education, that the person that was most important was that school leader. Nobody knew who the superintendent was. Nobody knew who the curriculum people were, but they knew who their building principal was, and that person was really important. And I think we need to go back to that, and I think some districts are doing that. I think we need to drive as many decisions down to the building level. People have talked about the great schools that are in IPS, whether they're a magnet school or a neighborhood school, or even some of the charter schools that are really good. And I think if you had to pick what makes them a great school, I bet you money they all have great leaders in them.
Is there another city you think's a model for us?
I don't know that anybody's actually gotten it right yet. I mean, I think that you can look at. I mean, I know New Orleans is an example people give as being something that's a disaster, and people also use it as an example of decentralization that works. And I think there are things we can learn from there. We can learn, obviously, the mistakes they made, as well as just learning, how they were able to decentralize. I think there's some other districts nationally that are going to more of a portfolio model where the focus is on the school. And I don't know that, I think there's probably a dozen or more districts nationally that are going through that process, but I don't know that anybody's been in it long enough to know whether or not, they're being successful with it.
Thanks. So we're going to move to a different format where I will ask some questions that all of you are welcome to answer. Just simply raise your hand if you'd like to answer it, or if you'd like to answer next. If you got here early, these questions might be familiar. I did use them in the earlier panel. But let's try it again and see if you folks have some different ideas. So the first question is, what needs to be different in the classroom? Not in the State House, not in the central office, not even in the students' homes, but in the classroom to better prepare IPS kids for life. Michael Brown, you were first.
The first thing that we have to do different in the classroom is we have to understand that all children learn differently. And then we have to adapt our teaching style. Being a former athlete and coach, there are times when you're given a team and you want to run a set offense. Well, you can't run it because you don't have that level of player participation. It's the same thing in the classroom. One example that I call a lot is School 46. School 46 they went in, they changed exactly how they did education in the classroom first. And that information was passed up to the principal. This is what's working in my classroom. Let's try it in another. The same thing happened at Jonathan Jennings. The same thing happened at Carl Weil, at Ernie Pyle. We have to be able to go into the classroom and allow our teacher leaders to be able to come and tell us, this is what'll work. Because Anna Parker, God rest her soul, used to always tout that she was a 50-year frontline educator. I've been in the classroom, okay? I understand what's going on. And it was mentioned earlier in the forum about some of the things that our children go through. Every time I raise my voice does not mean I'm upset. It may mean that I'm frustrated. And we have to find ways to reach that. We need to quit sending kids to GLC for petty things. If you don't have an opportunity to have a student in front of a teacher, your chances at academic success are few, because attendance is the #1 predictor of academic success. So we've got to make sure that we reduce class size enough to make it manageable for a teacher. And if it need be, we need to get an ESL assistant in, a special ed assistant. We need to follow the IEPs of our students and be able to address the student needs.
Thank you. James Turner, I think you were next.
Yeah. First, let's start off saying this. If you have a classroom full of kids that's failing, that's not a kid problem. That's an adult problem. And I say, when you look at the classroom, first of all, these teachers need more classroom management, classes and different things like that before they go into a classroom. Because a lot of time when you have young teachers like from Teach for America, different little situations like that, they're not really built or experienced enough to deal with our kids. So our kids become experiments to new teachers. So I want to stress that more than anything. That's an adult problem that we can handle.
Sorry, thank you. Samantha Derway?
We have to make sure that we give our teachers the power to control their classroom. I get so sick and tired of upper administration trying to control their classroom. They deal with these kids on a day-to-day basis. They know what's going on. They know if Peter needs to do this, if John needs to do that. We need to stop, take 10 steps backwards and let our teachers teach our kids. Then, if there's a problem, then we step in. But we're not giving our teachers enough time to even get the classrooms under control. in order for us to pass all these state tests that we have to take. And then we sit up and want to complain about our teachers, how horrible they are and how bad they are, and they can't do this and they can't do that. Well, you wouldn't be able to do it either if you don't let them do their job.
Thank you. Kelly Bentley, I think you're next.
I mean, I think it's as easy as just having really high expectations for kids, for their, kids and their schoolwork and their behavior, having high expectations for the adults in a school, and having a great leader, and letting that leader, I don't know, actually do their job. And so often they are not allowed to do their job, and that then translates into teachers not having really any control over what they're doing in their classroom. And those are the people, the teachers in a school, the building principal that knows their kids and knows what they need. And I think that we need to be able to give them the flexibility to make the decisions that are going to be in the best interest of the kids that they're serving.
Thank you. Lynette Eccles?
The most important thing is relationships. The most important thing is relationships, because relationships, or rules without relationships, breeds rebellion. These kids, if you don't have a relationship with them and tell them to pull up their pants, like, they're not going to listen to you. It's like, who are you? And they will say that. And so when you have that relationship with them, you are more than just an adult. You are somebody that cares for them, brings all the difference in the world. So relationships is so key. William Daggett said it. Relationships followed by rigor and relevance, and so that is what's needed.
How do you deal with that at a policy level? Is that about training teachers to understand the relationship better, or do you have to hire people with the right point of view?
Certainly. I think that is the professional development, that is the cultural competencies, that's the school leader stressing and setting that culture of high expectations, of this is how we operate as a school, and this is how a teacher will function in my school building.
Thank you. Next question. Does it matter if candidates in this race are receiving larger contributions than the school board race has seen in the past, and why or why not? Anybody want to start with that one? Kelly, why don't you start?
Well, since I've received a lot of money, I thought I'd start out. It's interesting because it's been implied that this is something new. And when I ran in 1998 in a primary, I raised over $10,000, and I did again in 2006 during a primary. Probably had to reach about half of the number of voters, even if that, in a primary election. There just wasn't a lot of turnout. And in a general election, there isn't great turnout either, but it's much better than a primary election. But it's important to be able to reach those voters. And so I've worked really hard to raise money to do just that. I'm not going to apologize for it. I've been around a long time. I have a lot of supporters in the community, and so I've been able to raise a lot of money. But if you're not reaching voters, either through direct mail or advertising, or, we all do the Chalkbeat surveys. We've done given information to the Indianapolis Star, and anybody else that's, asked for information. We've provided that, but we're kidding ourselves if we think the majority of voters are going to see that. And so it's really important for a candidate to be able to reach voters, and that's that's what running for an election is about. I don't think money in itself is some evil thing or something that school board candidates don't need when they run for election. I mean, I certainly always had it when I ran I ran once unopposed, so I didn't need to raise any money, which was kind of nice. But do I think there are better uses of campaign dollars? Absolutely. But we see that across the board, from school board all the way up to the president, that there's a inordinate amount of money that's needed to run a successful campaign. And if you want to win, that's what you do.
A quick follow-up. Do you personally know the CEO of LinkedIn?
No, I do not.
Why do you think he contributed to your campaign? He lives in California.
I think that he read about me and my positions on issues and what my priorities and what I want to accomplish, and he donated money to me, and I'm proud of that. But and I've gotten donations from some other people nationally. I think it's a good thing when we have very successful people that are willing to put their money where their mouth is. I don't think that that's problematic. But probably over 80% of the funds that I've raised have been raised locally. And I'm proud of that too. Someone suggested that, when you get money that way, that somehow some people are more important than others. And I had to point out to this person, who is also an elected official, who I also wrote a check to, I don't have a lot of money, so I pick and choose, and if I feel strongly that I want to support a candidate, I'll write a check to them. But I know that they're getting money from people that, they're getting dollar amounts that are much higher than what I'm giving, and they're getting dollar amounts from people that's much lower, or they're getting or they're not getting any money from a lot of people that can't afford it. If you're a person of integrity, which I think I am, and I think we have a lot of elected officials that are, all your constituents are important, whether they wrote you a check or not. And, and it's a system that we're living in that, people make donations to either candidates or issues donations. And I just feel strongly that I don't perceive that I am less worthy of my congressman's support congressman's support, as a constituent of his, because I didn't give him as much money as somebody that might have written, a $5,000 check. I'm still a constituent.
Thank you. Lynette Eccles, did you say you would answer?
Again, I appreciate all the support that I have been given, and financial contributions. Heck, I asked Amos for some money. But either way, it is not just a grass tops movement, it's a grassroots, and that's where I've definitely spent most of my time. I've been knocking on doors since June, and that's what I'm most proud of. The thousands of doors that I have knocked on, the families that I have spoken to that agree with me that things need to be done differently, that our children, families where, I live in this district, but I use someone else's address to go to a different township. And so there are families, thousands of them that I've talked to, that agree with me that we need to do something different, and that's what I'm most proud of, not the money.
Let me ask you the same question. Do you know the CEO of Facebook?
I wish I did.
Do you have any idea why would she contribute to an Indianapolis School Board race?
Like-minded individual that understands the need.
Others? Yeah, Michael Brown, would you like to weigh in?
Well, as probably the person that has raised the least amount, 85% to date of my political contributions live in the same house with me. But those people best understand the mission that I'm on. They know the things that I do. My wife understands the hours that I spend away from home, either at school board meetings or at athletic events or at walking the halls of Northwest High School. I'm reaching out to people that don't have the wherewithal to write that check, but their student still needs a hug, and I'm going to present myself available for that purpose. I think where a lot of people get it twisted is, I receive at my house 5 mailers a week, some from school board candidates, some from mayor, but they're political. To be perfectly honest, I don't read most of them. But what I do is I go out and I talk to people. I believe grassroots is where it's at. So where your heart lies also lies your treasure.
Do you have a problem with the way your opponent is conducting her campaign financing?
Well, from what I understand, she's not the one conducting it.
All
of the flyers that I get says not endorsed or authorized by a candidate.
So it sounds like you have a concern about that. Can you explain to us what the problem is?
I don't see a problem. You can spend your money any way you want to. My thing is, I've got 16 years experience as a school board member, but I've got over 30 years experience as an active participant in schools and 40 years coaching experience. I took James Turner to Canada when he was 14 years old.
He seems to have turned out okay.
Yeah, well, and he also coached my youngest son at Northwest. Those are the type of relationships that have carried me throughout the years. People know what I do.
So I want to make sure I'm clear. I think I heard you say you don't have a problem with the way she's conducting her campaign. Did I follow you?
No, I said I don't know that she's conducting her campaign based on the flyers.
Let me say this. Do you think it's a problem the way the campaign has been conducted in terms of the amount of money and the players who are contributing?
My question would be why?
Okay.
Why? And what is the return on your investment?
Okay. Sorry, Samantha Dare White, would you like to answer?
I agree. I'm so flattered that it's taking $30,000 or $45,000 to beat little old me. I am so flattered. That means I got it going on, that somebody got to go out and get $40,000 to beat little old me, a little mom of 2 kids.
Is it wrong?
Wow.
Are you saying it's wrong, though?
No, it ain't. Whatever floats her boat, go right with it. But I'm the only one out of 7 board members that did not ask for Stand for Children money. I didn't fill out their survey because I don't believe in what they do.
Okay.
I'm the only one.
Okay.
So if I lose that race, I'm glad she raised $40,000, $50,000 to beat me, because guess what? My head gonna be held high and I'm gonna keep on trucking, because it took that much for you to beat little old me with $1,000.
James Turner?
Everybody knows my story. Like I said, I got paid last Friday, bought me some yard signs. Hey, it's truly grassroots with me, because the community, I serve the community every day. I work at TAB too, also, every day. So I feel like I'm one of the voters and they feel like they me. So I'm, the time that I spent in the schools as a dean, as a graduation coach, helping those families, they know what I stand for. They know exactly what I stand for. So I don't have to be a politician. I don't have to raise that kind of money. My proof is in the pudding. I work every day.
I'm going to ask you the same follow-up question I asked both the folks next to you. Do you have a problem with the way this campaign's been conducted? They both said no, but they seem kind of emotional about it. What about you?
I won't say that I have a problem, but I do have a problem with candidates saying that they don't know what the people that's representing them are putting out, or they don't know what's going on in their own campaign. I don't believe that. We were on Amos Brown. I heard somebody say, one of the candidates, that she didn't know what was going out on these mailers. That's what I question. I also question the people giving the money, like Mr. Brown said, Dr. Brown said. I question the motives. Are they trying to buy our children? Are they trying to buy a school board that would change out where we would partner with charter? So I'm thinking that's why I'm running, because I want to have a say in my kids' education, and I don't want it to come from somebody from Chicago or somebody from Denver. Like, I'm really upset about that. My school is Broad Ripple. I'm a Broad Ripple Rocket. Go look on both walls. I'm a Hall of Fame athlete. I don't want, if my son decides to go there, I don't want to have to call Denver to get a response. I don't want to have to get with a reform group out of Denver that wants to take over Broad Ripple. That's not nothing to my liking.
Thank you. So next question, open to any of the candidates. Let's get into this question of partnering with charter schools that we've been talking about a lot tonight. So do you believe in a partnership with charter schools could help IPS improve in a way that it can't do on its own? And if you don't, do you think it would be harmful to IPS to partner with charter schools? Michael, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I definitely would. You know, here's the thing. Having served on the school board for a number of years, we have 26 different magnet and option programs. I am a firm believer in school choice. I just believe the choice is IPS. And I don't think people understand, because I'm pro-IPS doesn't make me anti-charter. The charter school law came from the legislature. There's nothing I can do to change it. However, my job, I was elected by the people, the voters, the constituents within the Indianapolis Public School System to work for the Indianapolis Public Schools. And that's where my concern lies, in improving IPS. Now, whatever it takes to improve IPS, I believe we have qualified people within our district. Should we untie their hands, or in the words of Dr. White, Free Willy, we give them an opportunity to do what needs to be done. We don't always have to go find a national consulting group to tell us what we already know. You know, I know a little something about the children of this district, okay? 7 of them belong to me. And they received an excellent education. Why? Because I was a concerned and involved parent. And the thing about it is, when I showed up at school, they saw I was involved, so they decided, oh, I better get concerned about this kid too. It is so important that we get involved in the schools and what's going on. And I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. I talked about the fivefold ministry. There's something for everybody. You have got to open up the door, open up your mouth and say, what can I do to help you? Mm-hmm. But as far as replicating things that work, look at the KIPP model. They should have the highest test scores on planet Earth. Why? Because they have a longer school day, a longer school week, and a longer school year. The longer you have a young person or a student in front of a teacher, the better chance they have of success.
So IPS just let KIPP move into one of their buildings. Is that a good idea?
We had a partnership with KIPP years ago. This is not something
But is
new.
it a good idea?
Yeah. Well,
are you in favor of it?
We voted as a board. See, that's the thing about being a sitting board member. My one opinion has to support what we did as a whole, okay? Because after we take a vote, it's in our code of ethics that we will not speak against something that we decided as a board, because one board member has no authority. We're only in authority when there are 7 of us voting together.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to go to Kelly Bentley, and then I'll come to James Turner. Kelly Bentley?
I support partnering with anybody and everybody that will help kids succeed. I think there's some great schools in IPS. I think that we ought to look at what makes them a great school. And I think there are some great charter schools. We need to look at what makes them a great charter school. I mean, I think that we need to be focused on excellence regardless of what kind of school it is. You know, our city relies on having great public schools. Charter schools are public schools. I know they operate on a different set of rules. I would love to have schools in IPS have I started to echo. I would love to have the schools in IPS have the same kind of charter-like autonomy, because I think that that's an important part of why some schools are successful. But I just think we need to get beyond the labels. I mean, we just need to have great schools in our city. IPS has some great ones. We have some great charter schools, but we have a lot of schools that are failing kids, and we need to do something about it.
Thank you. James Turner, you're next.
Okay, what I'm finna tell you, it's fact and it's true. Hal and Arlington. Do I need to say more? Hal and Arlington. I've seen what combining a charter model with an IPS school brings you. They want to give the school right back. Now, I've yet to see it work. And this is the truth. Like, I have nothing against Marcus Robinson. I think he's great. And I think charters can succeed built from the ground up being charter. The takeover process does not work. Combining charter with IPS does not work, and that's not an opinion, it's a fact. Go look it up. If anybody don't know, go look it up. It's a fact that it hasn't worked, and they're willing to give the school back to us in December if we take it. So, no, I've never seen it work. I have yet to see it work. I don't think that the public really understands that. I mean, the community that needs to know, because I think some of me and some of the candidates, we got a different opinion of community. You know what I mean? Their community may be the business community. My community is the kids that's barely eating. That serves it's 84% poverty, 83% poverty in our district. We're not addressing that. We're not addressing that. We're trying to start new schools, and those are experiment schools. I need to finish this. We have a system that's working. People didn't know, I don't know if anybody knew this, in 2013, I think amongst our high schools, we might have had a 77% graduation rate. That's not a failing situation. So I think the public was made to believe that IPS was under this big collapse when actually they were growing.
Was it okay that in that very year, Arlington the year before, 2012, last year Arlington was part of IPS. Half the kids graduated, but they couldn't pass the state test. Is that a problem?
No, let me tell you why. I was a graduation coach and the dean at Arlington at that time. What I want people to realize is if that test would have been given when I was in high school, I'd have had a hard time passing it. I just wasn't a good test taker, but it took me 3 times to pass the SAT to go Division I. So my thing is, a kid being judged off a test is not always the right thing. So when we start taking away from waivers and different things like that, we're taking away for kids that's in poverty. That's not an excuse, it's a fact.
I'm sorry.
I just think that we're getting confused with what IPS is trying to do. IPS, we have a lot of buildings that we're trying to rent out space and things like that. And I don't have a problem letting a charter school rent my space, okay? But what I do have a problem with is combining the charter school with IPS school. That's a big problem, but I think you all need to understand that's not really happening in our school district. We're leasing space out to a lot of charter schools. We have not combined the charter schools into our traditional schools. Charter school, I'm all for competition, but don't tell me that charter schools outweighing traditional schools when we got charter schools failing every day just like traditional. Don't try to put them above us and say that they're better than we are, because it's not the truth. When the scores come out, I didn't saw the scores, some of the scores. When the scores come out, I think these ones that's charter, that really believe in charter, they're going to be very upset when they see the scores that come out. So let's not get this confused with IPS. We are not combining charter schools with traditional schools. We are leasing space, which makes sense. Which makes sense. More money to the classroom. That's all we're doing. And so when everybody find out what we're doing and understand what we're doing, then we can move forward. All these lies going around saying we're doing this, we're doing that. No, we're not. No, we're not. I'm sitting on the board. I know what we're doing. We are not combining the schools.
Some board members would like to, though, right?
Well, some of them might like to combine them. That's them. I'm one of 7. Guess what? If it's not working, we're not going to do it. I'm not going to vote for it. Now, if 6 out of the 7 vote for it, then I have to go along with it. But I'm not going to combine something that's not working. That doesn't make any sense. And then we got all of these all of these new projects and all of these new schools coming out. I done heard so many new schools come out. Oh my God, they gonna start this and they gonna start that and they gonna take 2 years to get to this point and 2 years to get to that point. And I'm like, seriously, are you serious? Are you really serious? You are selling my babies to people that don't even know what they're doing.
Lanier, hang on, I think Lanier Eccles has been waiting. Go ahead.
All right. So to answer the question, I think that partnerships are key. I think that we can learn things from all models, all walks of life. So the whole idea of partnering with the charter schools, definitely to learn best practices in both the schools and IPS as well as the charter schools. What are you doing to make the children learn? What are you doing to support children? I don't care where the idea comes from, just as long as it works for the child. Again, as I said previously, the whole idea that children learn differently, we're going to have to approach them differently in learning models and that whole idea. So the idea of a portfolio model, so kids, saying a magnet is one thing, and I appreciate those magnets, but again, I have a school full of children that learn completely different, and it's not offered anywhere else. I had children coming from Muncie because their district wasn't doing it. I had children coming from McCordsville. So with that, there are still opportunities that we could partnership with colleges and universities to lease space, which is key, because that whole idea of selling it for $1 isn't worth it. I would rather go ahead and make that $6,000, $7,000 a month leasing it rather than it going away for $1. So that's where I stand on that.
Okay, we're going to soon be into audience comments, so I wanted to ask the folks who would collect questions to begin doing that. They're on both sides. If you need a card, just wave at them, or if you already have your question written, hand it to them, and you can begin writing questions if you'd like. I'm going to quickly ask one more question, then we'll go to the audience. So the last question is about preschool. As I mentioned in the first forum, everyone seems to be interested in preschool. The state's going to have a program. The city might have a program. IPS has been expanding its program. What's the right role for IPS to play when it comes to preschool? And Samantha, since you're on the board, would you like to start?
Preschool is the #1 key. I mean, studies after studies after study. Early childhood education is the key. The earlier we get them, the better off they'll be. we're moving in the right direction. But you got to keep in mind, we started this program 2 years ago. We just got people jumping on the bandwagon this last year and year and a half talking about how much they're going to give. Ever since I've been on the board, this has been a topic of conversation. We have put money out of our general fund to fund these preschools. Now we got all these new and improved candidates to run for school board, and so now it's becoming an issue that now we're going to help. We're going to really help start this program. But IPS has been doing it, and we've been successful at it. So if you want to help, come on and help. But remember, we started it, and y'all just come on and add on to what we already doing.
Thanks. I'm going to go back to Lanier. Since you're way on the end there, I seem to get to you last every time.
Yeah, no,
would
it's
you like
fine.
to go next?
It is early childhood education is key. It's ridiculous that we require them to read by the 3rd grade, but don't require them to go to school until 1st grade. It's absurd. Why would we do that? And I think as a state, we need to put a state, city board, we need to put our money where our mouth is. On the tuition per dollars, $7,000 I would say is how much the tuition for children are, but we spend $33,000 to incarcerate them. So the sooner we start our children in education, the sooner we get them in a classroom, the better off we will be. A lot of our boys are being marked as ADHD because their first time being in a classroom is 1st grade. It's not that he has ADHD, it's the first time he's in the classroom. So we definitely need to address that.
Kelly Bentley?
I don't think it's anything new that early childhood education is important. I think quality is probably the key word. Just throwing kids into early childhood education isn't going to help anything if it's not a quality program. I think that we have had very little oversight from the state and very little regulation of daycare centers that get a ton of money from the state of Indiana through child care vouchers, and there's no accountability on any sort of academic component of those programs, and there should be. I think Indiana, we need to mandate kindergarten. We don't do that. I mean, you can be 7 years old and start school, and that's tragic, I think. But I think the important part of expanding early childhood is not to just expand it, but make sure we're expanding quality programs and that there's some accountability and regulation in place to make sure that they're quality programs.
Thank you. Michael Brown?
Let me take this from a different perspective. I hear all the time, what are you going to do to improve the educational outcomes of high school students? Okay, newsflash, you're not going to fix high school at the high school level. You're going to fix the high school at the elementary level. You're going to fix the elementary level at the kindergarten and preschool level. Because unless we put solid building blocks in place, State of Indiana, City of Indianapolis, IPS, unless you put solid building blocks in place, our children are not going to be successful. Let me tell you why. If you've got a student that's a junior in high school and they're reading on the 3rd grade level, that's a problem. Because K through 3, you're learning to read. 4 through 6, you're reading to learn. If I cannot get you on a reading par, then you're going to be in trouble. Now, let's talk about kindergarten. When the state was trying to figure out how to do full-day kindergarten, who showed them? IPS did. When the state wanted to talk about preschool, who jumped in there first? IPS did. But no one mentions that. We diverted monies in order to be able to fund full-day kindergartens because that's what our students needed. There have been a lot of things that IPS has done that we don't get credit for. And those are 2 of them. So before we start looking, and you're right, there's a lot of money spent on childcare, but we need education, and we need to develop a curriculum for preschool, for kindergarten, and there's no retention in kindergarten because the state only gives us a half of a payment for a kindergarten student.
Let me ask you, why do you think those early childhood efforts by IPS over the last couple of years hasn't showed more results in terms of test scores?
Because
test scores are still low.
because they haven't gotten to the testing stage
Well,
yet.
they're in elementary school, even elementary school grades.
Just now in our elementary schools, many of them perform extremely well. We have some that underperform, but many of them perform extremely well. And a lot of that is because of the concerted effort of the school district trying to make sure that we have an opportunity. See, there's another thing. We present opportunities. We take away excuses. But if James Turner doesn't send his son or his daughter to preschool or to kindergarten, he doesn't have to. We're going back to parental choice. That is their choice.
Thanks. James, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll weigh in on it. I think preschool is a must. It is a must. I think we should, like she said, 2 years ago, our old administration was pushing for it. I think he got some rejection, you know, from the state. I know, yeah, a lot of people sitting up here voted against it, against him. And it wasn't the policy, they was voting against the administration instead of, you know, thinking about the children. And it's so, when I hear all this 2 years ago and all these good things that we're doing, I'm sitting here wondering, just, you know, ordinary person, why did we get rid of the old administration again? And why would we go get $850 or $1 million to get rid of them, but we can't get money to start preschool in IPS? I don't get it. So
Okay.
I'm just a normal person, though, just ordinary person.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to audience questions. There's several good ones. I'm going to try to get through as many as I can. So the first one's about magnet schools. There are, as I'm sure you all know, there are several very good magnet schools in IPS. This questioner argues that that has created some inequity within the district, and the question is, how can we address access to successful schools? Sir, Michael Brown?
Okay, the magnet process is something that was set forth by, we wanted parental choice. We wanted people to choose what learning model they felt best fit their student. And all of our magnets are successful. And the reason they're successful is you will find that there are more involved parents. There's sometimes a laser-focused curriculum. My son went to middle school at CFI in the IB program. He went back to Northwest, and he was successful there as well. What we have to do is make sure that it's easy to say, let's replicate the successful programs. However, Seidner isn't for every student. You have to test into Seidner, but you walk to Jonathan Jennings. You know, we have the CFI schools that are very successful, but you walk to School 46. I mean, these are also successful schools. We need to replicate not only our magnet programs, but our regular ed programs. One thing that I've noticed as I've toured the country with my affiliations with the National School Board Association and the Council of Urban Boards of Education is they talk about these successful programs that they've started, and they came in and they built this school up, and they've also handpicked their students. What about the students and the parents that can't afford to send their kid across town? What about those that walk? How are we going to attack them? One of the things, we talked about 1321 briefly, and everyone didn't get an opportunity to weigh in. However, my understanding was that we were going to give people an opportunity to say, hey, Mike, you got a school here that's underperforming. Let me come in and show you how to reach these children. That's not what I heard, though. What I heard was, we want to start a new school. Okay, if you start a new school and you can hand select your students, I expect you to be successful. I want you to show me how to reach these students that are underperforming. What do? You look at the successful neighborhood schools and you say, wow, can we clone that principal? Can we clone these teachers? What are they doing differently that makes them successful in a school 2 miles away unsuccessful?
Thank you. I just want to take a shot at that.
I'm not sure I agree that magnet programs have caused inequity. I think there is inequity in the district, and I think the school board, that is one of their biggest responsibilities is to ensure that there's equity. I mean, when you've got, I know magnet schools that everybody has a laptop, and then there's a magnet school down the street where nobody has a laptop and they barely have a computer that works. So, I'm not sure that magnet schools have created that inequity, but I think one of the things that could help with that is to drive as many resources to the building level and let buildings make decisions on how they're going to spend their money. Right now, no one can tell you how much it costs to run school A versus school B versus school C. Nobody can tell you that. And you know, I was at a conference a couple of years ago, or a panel discussion, and there was a person that there, I think you might have been there, it was about education finance. And the person said, you know, we spend half of our state budget on education in Indiana, and nobody knows how the money is spent. And it's true, because of the way we account for funds within a district. So I think that, you know, the board certainly has a responsibility to make sure there's equity across each school. And we do that, I think, by driving those resources to the building and let buildings make decisions and be transparent about how much schools cost to run individually. And we're not doing that right now.
So let me, I think Lanier was next, and then Samantha Darwhite, Lanier Eccles.
Yeah, you stole my thunder. Definitely. But another point to that is expanding. I know that when I worked at Harshman, we were operating half full. A great school, but operating half full. And so making sure that we open as many seats. There should never be a wait list, and if I have a whole wing of a building open, to bring those kids into there. And I think expanding those magnet programs, or the capacity at that building, is definitely key. And then garnering the how can we possibly replicate, I think, is key as well.
Thanks. Samantha Darwhite?
I just got a small statement. These last 2 years, our teachers have been able to take their Title I money and distribute it the way that they want to see it distributed. We're moving forward. See, this is what is so mind-boggling to me, is that we're moving forward, but we have candidates talking about what we're not doing. But in 4 years, I have seen a big change. You can't expect for everything to turn over overnight, you know, within a year or 2 years. I mean, we are moving forward. We are changing policies left and right, trying to make our schools better. We love our children. It's like it's a segment or something that's, you know, that we don't want our kids to succeed. I received a flyer in the mail today with this little kid in a corner. She looked like she was hungry and deprived, and it looked like something was wrong. And I said, why would someone send this out to parents, and make a mockery of a kid? And the kid probably don't even attend IPS. We have to understand that we are moving forward, and stop saying what we're not doing and look at what we are doing.
Thank you. James, did you want to weigh in? No? Okay. So next question. This is this question writer said that their personal experience with charter schools is that they sometimes will tell people who want to enroll that they just don't have the resources to meet their students' IEP needs, in other words, their special education needs. So the question is, how can you prevent this practice in a partnership with IPS charter schools? Maybe, Lanier, do you want to try to take a crack at that question?
I think that starts with a lack of knowledge, because some people or some parents will take that and go like, well, I guess I can't go there. No, as a parent, you demand, because they have to service your IEP. Yeah, so I think it's a lack of knowledge and making sure that the parents have the tools to advocate for their child. And I don't think that's going to be a concern partnering with charter schools, excuse me.
That may be true, what you say, but like, would you send your child to a school where they tried to tell you that we don't really want your kid to enroll?
Personally, I wouldn't send my child there. If they say, oh, I don't think I have the services, oh, I don't think you can help my child, I'll go somewhere else, but that's personally.
I mean, we all know this is not legal. That practice is not legal. And yet, I do hear that story quite a bit. So, James, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I do. I think that's why the charter schools are let's say, they want IPS because they know IPS buildings can service that population. So to me, I'm looking at this 1321 bill as a way to build charter off the back of IPS. If you get what I'm saying, like if you go to a charter school, we have a wing in IPS, as Dr. Brown, if I'm not mistaken, where we service kids in wheelchairs, kids with IEPs. But when I go to other schools, I don't see that. And that's what I said. Now, just to piggyback on something else, we were talking about building, sharing space with charters. That money don't go into the classroom. That goes into the building and maintenance fund. Does people know that? Like, I'm not on the school board, but I do know that. So when you hear people say, yeah, we don't mind, we're making money. We're not making money that goes into the classroom. We're making money to improve our buildings so we can partner with charters and they can take over.
But
so
we can free up some money.
I mean,
can free up some money.
I stand on what I just said.
We can free
And I
up
meant
some
it.
money.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on that question of charter schools and special ed and partnerships with IPS? Michael?
You know, a lot of times we focus on our placemat. As a school board member, I have to focus on the entire table. We service all of the children that come through our front door. We don't question why. We don't question what the disability might be. We say, come to us and we will do our absolute best to educate you. IPS is nationally renowned because of the way we service our special ed population. There are people that move from other states, actually. I have a relative that's moving back from Sacramento, California, because he said his son is not being serviced the way he was when he was in IPS. We want to wrap our arms around all of our students and allow them the opportunity to be successful. Does that mean every student is going to pass the I-STEP? No, it does not. But we want to give them the opportunity to be engaged with no excuses.
I just want to quickly ask you about this notion James was alluding to. In a partnership with IPS, one advantage for the charter school to partner is that they might be able to access special ed services, as he suggested. What's in it for IPS in those partnerships?
Well, let me tell you. Right now, there is what we call flow-through dollars that come in, and we vote on it every month, and it flows out to township schools that service our Title I or our special ed students. We have St. Mary's Child Care Development. We have Lutherwood, places that service our students. Those dollars come into our budget. They go right out of our budget to service them. We are going to service any student whose parent has residence in the IPS district.
Kelly Bentley, I think you're the only one who didn't get a chance to answer
Well,
that.
I mean, IPS has a legal obligation to educate every child that walks through the door, but they don't educate every child in every school. I mean, we have schools, for example, that have programs focused on children with autism. 58 schools. Is it 58? Anyway, schools don't have those programs in every single building. I mean, I think if you believe that that kids learn differently, that we have all of these great options in order to meet the needs of all of those different kinds of learning styles, we have to make sure that we have programs that meet needs of kids, but it's not going to happen in every single building. Do I think that charter schools should, counsel out students that aren't being successful in their building? No, I think that's wrong. But I also think there are opportunities for us, and I think you mentioned it, about partnering with special ed services. IPS does a phenomenal job in their special ed department. I mean, I really do. I think they do a great job. And, and so if partnering with other schools is beneficial, I mean, we certainly do that with, we provide services to non-public schools through the public school system with, for kids that might have some learning disabilities and other special needs. And so I'm not sure that, we should consider charter schools any different from that. We need to be able to serve kids and make sure they're being successful. And I think that if we can partner and help with that, I think that's a good thing.
So we're going to have to wrap it up here. But thank you all. Let's thank all the candidates who came out tonight and spoke with us. Also, thanks to all of you. This was a long evening. I appreciate all of you staying through the end of it and listening to all the candidates. I also want to thank our partners again putting on this event, Chalkbeat, WFYI, and the Central Library. Also playing a role was the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the American Graduate Project. Also our sponsors, Teachers Treasures and Stand for Children. We appreciate them. Finally, just some last words. I also wanted to thank some folks who helped us organize, especially Gail Strong, Carly Weideman, Michelle Johnson, and Tricia Shrug from FYI, Melanie Weissel and her team at the Central Library, Haley Colombo, Shana Cavazos from my team at Chalkbeat, and Margaret Sheehan from Teachers Treasures. Thank you very much for coming.